Beneath the ice and silence of the Arctic, some of the deadliest predators from the Ice Age are still lying in wait. Saber-toothed cats, ancient wolves, and cave lions so fresh, scientists are considering cloning them. These are terrifying frozen creatures scientists are too afraid to defrost. Deep in the frozen wilds of Siberia, a creature straight out of prehistoric times was found curled up in the permafrost, a baby saber-toothed cat. It was discovered in 2020 near the Indigirka River, and despite being over 35,000 years old, the thing looked like it had only been dead a few days. It had thick fur, skin, claws, even its internal organs. It was all still there, and yes, the tiny sabers too. Scientists think it might have been buried in a landslide and flash frozen before decay could even start, and wasn't alone. Another cub, a few years younger, was found in the same region, preserved the same eerie way. But nobody's rushing to thaw these little killers out. The deeper they look, the more they realize just how little they know about these ancient predators. There's something about seeing a baby version of something so dangerous, though, that just hits different. Like, it's cute, but also very much not. In 2016, a gold miner working near Dawson City in Canada's Yukon Territory came across something in the permafrost, a perfectly preserved Ice Age wolf pup, frozen for over 57,000 years. It wasn't a skeleton or a pile of fur and bones, it was an entire wolf, with skin, fur, tiny claws, even some of its whiskers were still intact. Genetic testing showed that it came from an ancient extinct branch, older than modern gray wolves, and adapted to a world most humans wouldn't survive 5 minutes in. They think it died inside its den. Maybe the roof collapsed, maybe the ground shifted, but either way, something sealed it in tight and froze it solid before decay had even had a chance to start. And that kind of preservation doesn't happen unless the timing is perfect, and honestly, it's a little creepy how perfect it was. The more scientists studied it, the more questions they had about its species, about how it got so well preserved, about what else might be hiding under the ice just as intact. In the Siberian permafrost, scientists found 2 cave lion cubs so well preserved they didn't really look ancient, they looked recent. But these weren't house cats. They were baby versions of Panthera spile, aka the Eurasian cave lion. These things were massive, possibly larger than modern lions, and built for brute power. They hunted mammoths, they hunted bison, they hunted each other. One study found bones of a cave lion that had been gnawed on by another cave lion. The 2 frozen cubs, dubbed Sparta and Boris, are estimated to be around 30,000 years old, and scientists still don't know how they died exactly, but they're so well preserved, they're actually talking of cloning. The thing is, nobody's sure what kind of animal behavior you'd get out of these things if you actually defrosted them. Their instincts are 30,000 years old and hardwired for a world we don't live in anymore. So what could possibly go wrong there? In 2015, researchers in Siberia discovered a frozen woolly rhino calf that had been locked in ice for over 34,000 years. Its name is Sasha, and it's the only baby woolly rhino ever found. And it's not just bones, this thing still had skin, hair, a stubby little horn, even muscle tissue. But don't let the baby part fool you, woolly rhinos were absolute tanks. Adults could weigh over 2 tons, with horns up to 3 feet long, and you'd think for their size that they'd be slow too, but fossil evidence shows they could charge like a freight train, and they likely had tempers to match. These animals were built for war against the cold, against predators, and sometimes even against each other. Ancient cave art shows humans were just terrified of these things, often drawing them mid-charge or goring other animals, or again locked in battle with each other. If anyone's thinking of cloning a few of these things, they better make sure the fencing is just really strong. You can't see them with the naked eye, but Deloid rotifers are kind of freaky. These tiny aquatic creatures were found frozen in the Siberian permafrost, buried 11 feet deep and at least 24,000 years old. Scientists thawed them out and they started moving. So after 2.5 ice ages, they just woke up. They also cloned themselves. Deloid rotifers reproduce through parthenogenesis, which means they've got no need for males. They They can just endlessly self-copy, and they don't just survive cold. They can endure radiation, starvation, dehydration, even the vacuum of space. Their bodies will just shut down but stay preserved, and then when conditions are right, they kind of reboot. Now, scientists are wondering how long they can actually last and how many more are still down there dormant, waiting. In the icy ground of Siberia, scientists have dug up baby mammoths so perfectly preserved they still have eyelashes. One of the most famous is Lyuba, found in 2007 by a reindeer herder. She's around 42,000 years old, but she still has skin, fur, internal organs. Even the milk from her mother is still inside her stomach. Another calf, Yuka, was found with strange cut marks on her bones, like something or someone had been trying to carve her up. Could have been ancient human butchering, attacks from other predators, but the truth is nobody knows exactly what happened. Every time one of these calves gets pulled from the permafrost, though, it cranks up the conversation about cloning, but even if they could bring one of these things back, should they? Once again in Siberia and Alaska, scientists have found ancient bison that are so well preserved they still had red in their veins. One of the best examples was discovered in 1979, a frozen bison they named Blue Babe because of this bluish tint from the minerals in the soil. The thing had muscle, skin, even visible wounds. It had clearly been killed by something, and then it froze before it could rot. But here's something pretty cool. These mummified bison showed signs of being stalked and eaten by predators that do not exist anymore. Deep claw marks, crushed vertebrae, and punctures that match the bite force of predators that have been extinct for a very, very long time. And scientists haven't just found one, there are multiple ancient bison mummies turning up as the permafrost melts, and each one paints a clear picture of this brutal predatory world buried under the ice. They're also keeping samples for cloning research potentially, so if you ever wanted to see a prehistoric beast brought back from the dead, they are kind of working on it. In Yukon, Canada, buried in the permafrost, scientists uncovered the frozen remains of Ice Age horses that once galloped across the tundra in massive herds. Obviously, they weren't like today's horses. They were stockier, hairier, adapted to survive in some of the harshest conditions Earth has ever seen. One foal, perfectly preserved, was found in a gold mine in 2018, still covered in reddish-brown fur. Hooves, eyelashes, even its stomach contents intact. It was over 40,000 years old, but looked more like it had just lain down for a nap. The species, Aquis lambe, went extinct thousands of years ago, but DNA from these frozen animals are so well preserved sometimes, scientists are seriously considering using it for cloning. The idea is to bring them back, and not just as a curiosity, but possibly to repopulate the tundra with them to help slow permafrost melt. Because right now it's melting faster than ever, and we're seeing more and more pieces of an ecosystem that hasn't seen sunlight in tens of thousands of years, and not everything coming out of the ice is dead. In 2014, scientists digging through 30,000-year-old permafrost in Siberia found something that was very much not extinct, a virus, a massive one. So big you could see it under a regular microscope. They called it Pithovirus sibericum, and it's part of a terrifying new category, giant viruses. Two words you just don't want to hear right beside each other. Well, this ancient giant virus actually reanimated after being frozen for tens of thousands of years, and more of these ancient viruses have been found since, buried in melting ice, all still capable of waking up and infecting hosts. The one they revived didn't target humans, just amoebas, thankfully. But that's the part that makes researchers nervous. If some ancient virus can survive that long, what else is waiting to thaw? And are we even remotely prepared for it? Because you can quarantine, a lion, you can contain a mammoth, but a virus you've never dealt with before? Good luck. In Canada's Yukon Territory, scientists came across bones and fragments of an animal that sounds made up. Giant Ice Age camels. Yes, camels in the snow. Kind of a bizarre image. Not the two-humped animals we know today, obviously. They were massive and built to survive brutal cold, not scorching heat. They had long legs, thick fat stores, and bones tougher than steel. Fossils of these ancient camels were found in gold mines near Dawson City, preserved in permafrost so well, researchers were able to extract collagen from their bones, something that usually doesn't survive past a few thousand years. These camels would have roamed the same icy landscape as mammoths, direwolves, and saber-toothed cats. Some estimates say they stood over 9 feet tall, and while they might not look terrifying at first glance, just their sheer size, the power, the fact that they existed in this totally different version of North America, it makes them feel more like monsters than mammals. Scientists still don't completely understand how they adapted to such extreme environments or how they disappeared, but every time the ground thaws a little more bones come up, and we're starting to realize just how alien the Ice Age really was. Imagine a microscopic creature that can survive space travel, a 12,400-year-old puppy with its brain almost perfectly preserved. And what does a bison that's been frozen for 9,000 years taste like? These are more terrifying frozen creatures scientists are too afraid to defrost. What you're looking at here is a water bear. Which Star Wars movie is it from? Well, none. These things actually exist right here at home. They're just really tiny, thankfully, because that thing looks like something from David Lynch's Dune. Wouldn't want to live in a world where this thing was as big as even a regular-sized house cat. Tardigrades, nicknamed water bears, are resilient, rather fascinating little creatures. They're microscopic animals that are known for their ability to survive in pretty extreme conditions. In Antarctica, tardigrades have been found frozen in ice for thousands of years. What's amazing about these little creatures is their ability to go into a state of suspended animation. When conditions are harsh, like extreme cold or dryness even, tardigrades dry out and enter a kind of hibernation. When researchers thaw them out, they can come back to life. Water bears have even survived space travel in this dormant state, making them one of the toughest known organisms. Their ability to withstand freezing, radiation, even the vacuum of space just goes to show that these little things may be the hardiest little critters on the face of the planet. Back in 2015, Siberian herders made a pretty crazy discovery. While looking for mammoth ivory in the frozen tundra, they found a 12,400-year-old puppy frozen in the permafrost. It was incredibly well preserved. The puppy's fur, whiskers, even its little nose was still intact, which is pretty unheard of for animals that have been frozen for, tens of thousands of years. And the craziest part is its brain. Most ancient animals that get frozen, especially ones that old, end up with their brains completely degraded. This puppy, though, had a brain that was almost entirely undamaged. Crazy. So scientists think this thing could have been a link between ancient wolves and the first domesticated dogs, which is also huge. The preservation of this puppy could help us solve one of the biggest mysteries in human history. How did humans first tame wolves and turn them into dogs? By extracting its DNA, researchers could unlock a lot of answers, giving us a better idea of when and how dogs became the adorable pets that we know and love today. In 2011, a team of researchers in Siberia made an absolutely amazing find. It was a bison that had been frozen for over 9,000 years. They didn't just find bones, though. The thing was preserved like it had just died the day before. The bison was covered in thick fur, it still had some muscle tissue, and even some of its internal organs, including its heart, they were almost perfectly preserved. And that level of preservation is rare for something this old, even when frozen. And this is absolutely nuts, kind of gross. So to make things even more surreal, scientists actually cooked and ate a piece of the meat. They were curious to see what 9,000-year-old bison tasted like. Turns out the answer is not much. Apparently it was chewy, didn't really taste like a lot, because that's what happens when your meat's been sitting in the freezer for 9,000 years. I would not have tasted that, I don't think. I don't care how many scientists are around telling me it's safe. I just don't really see the point. You guys go ahead. In 2018, Russian researchers found a horsefowl in Siberia that had been frozen in permafrost for over 42,000 years. What's so mind-blowing about this find isn't just how old it was how it was preserved. The foal still had its hooves, its fur, even its internal organs. But what really sent scientists into a frenzy was the fact that its BLOOD was still inside its body. Bodily fluids from a horse that lived during the Ice Age, preserved preserved for tens of thousands of years. Well, because there was so much of the animal still there, the discovery kind of got people talking about cloning. And it wasn't just a passing thought. Scientists started to seriously discuss whether this young horse could be the key to bringing extinct species back to life. I mean, imagine seeing a horse from the Ice Age galloping around again, just like something out of Jurassic Park. I mean, not as cool because it would be a horse instead of a dinosaur, but still an ancient horse. It's something, at least. In 2021, scientists discovered a frozen mammoth in Siberia, and this one was unlike anything they'd seen before. Most frozen mammoths are found as skeletons or with only small traces of flesh, but this one had actual chunks of flesh hanging from its bones. I mean, look at this thing. It almost looks like just a modern elephant. And again, it also had red stuff still in its body. Find helped scientists study how certain biological materials can survive freezing temperatures for such a long time. Researchers were able to collect samples of the BLOOD to analyze how it managed to stay in liquid form for so long, which could have massive implications for modern medicine. If scientists can figure out how mammoth BLOOD survived in permafrost, it could lead to breakthroughs in preserving organs for transplants, say. In 2022, scientists revived a virus that had been frozen for nearly 50,000 years. A virus called Pandoravirus yedoma was discovered in the Siberian permafrost. Fortunately, it only infects single-celled organisms, but the fact that something can survive being frozen for thousands and thousands of years and still be infectious, that opens up a lot of questions and concerns. For one, if a virus can stay in a state of suspended animation for that long and come back to life, what other dormant viruses or pathogens could be lurking in the melting permafrost? Scientists are especially concerned because climate change is causing permafrost to thaw at a pretty alarming rate, meaning more ancient viruses and bacteria could be released into the world. There could be viruses from the Ice Age that might be deadly to humans. You know, us modern folk just wouldn't have the immunity to them. Kimberly Miner, a climate scientist at the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory, had this to say: "There's a lot going on with the permafrost that is of concern, and it really shows why it's super important that we keep as much of the permafrost frozen as possible." End quote. Now, to some, an old virus trapped in ice suddenly springing back to life and spreading across the world sounds like a zombie movie plot, and sure, the chances of things getting that bad are slim, but these frozen viruses are actually sometimes referred to as zombie viruses, and scientists have discovered some pretty unsettling things in the permafrost over the years. For example, in 1997, a lung sample from a woman buried in permafrost in Alaska was found to contain genetic material from the 1918 flu epidemic. Then in 2012, researchers confirmed that a 300-year-old mummy from Siberia had the genetic signatures of the smallpox virus, and just in 2016, there was a small anthrax outbreak in Siberia, which affected a small group of people and thousands of reindeer. This was also thanks to thawing permafrost. On a lighter note though, let's briefly talk about nematodes, also known as roundworms. This is another type of microscopic thing that can survive through freezing temperatures. In Antarctica, researchers have discovered these tiny worms frozen in the ice. Like tardigrades, nematodes can enter a state of suspended animation when conditions become too hard, and when they're thawed, they can sometimes revive and resume their normal activities. Not sure what nematodes get up to, probably not all that interesting, but still they can go back to doing whatever it is, which is pretty cool. It's also pretty cool is that scientists study these nematodes because their ability to survive might give us some clues about how to preserve other biological material and learn more about how life might survive in other extreme environments on Earth or even out in space. In 2020, researchers discovered the preserved remains of a woolly rhino on a Russian island. It still had some fur, its skin, and muscle tissue. What made it even more interesting is that the rhino was still a juvenile when it died, likely around 3 or 4 years old. Now, why is this so interesting? Well, because it was so young, only about 3 or 4, it helped researchers learn more about what growing up in the Ice Age was actually like, what they ate, how fast it grew, what kind of hellish environment it was dealing with, and how these things would have developed as they aged. In terms of how it died, it couldn't say for sure, but it looked like it probably drowned after falling through ice into freezing water. Instant deep freeze. This thing kind of looks like a brick too. It's like flat. Again, in 2020, scientists found a bird frozen so perfectly that it looked like it had just fallen out of the sky. It was a horned lark and had been dead for about 46,000 years. 46,000 years, and it looked like this. You know, still not like a great way for your body to be. Obviously the thing is dead, right? It doesn't look great. But if I were just looking at this image with no context, I would have thought it was dead for maybe 6 months. Not, 46,000 years. The bird was encased in ice, which preserved it in almost the same way it would have looked back in the Ice Age. Scientists took DNA samples to compare it to modern birds. The goal was to learn about how species evolved over tens of thousands of years and possibly understand how the climate changes of that era might have influenced bird evolution. It also gave them a great look at how the Ice Age didn't just freeze mammals, it preserved all kinds of life forms. In 2019, reindeer herders in Siberia came across something pretty macabre but also really cool. A severed bear head, frozen solid in the permafrost. But this was a very old bear, a Pleistocene cave bear, a giant of the Ice Age that could grow up to 11 feet tall and weigh over 3,000 pounds. The head was almost perfectly preserved with fur, teeth, and even the brain still inside. The cave bear has been extinct for about 24,000 years, but this head was so well preserved it almost looked like it had been frozen yesterday. And I know what you're thinking, but no, they did not find the body. How did just the head survive so perfectly, and where is the rest of it? Was it scavenged? That would be my guess. Hunters would have probably killed the thing and then ate the rest of its body. The release of ancient viruses from thawing ice, secret military operations dating back to World War II, and technology being used to contact extraterrestrials. There may be much more going on in Antarctica than you think. Eric Hecker, a former Raytheon Technologies Corporation employee, made a controversial statement about his experiences in Antarctica. At a United States UFO disclosure meeting, Hecker claimed that he'd seen, quote, powerful machines in Antarctica that could potentially be used to, quote, contact alien crafts in deep space. He referred specifically to the Ice Cube Neutrino Observatory, a scientific facility in the South Pole, which he said wasn't just a listening device as it was advertised. According to Hecker, the device has the capacity to transmit signals and in fact may be part of a much larger and more secretive operation. He even went as far to say that the facility is, quote, the world's largest direct energy weapons system. So could there be some crazy hidden technology and government projects going on in the icy tundra of the Antarctic? And if so, could some of it come from somewhere beyond Earth? UFOs in Antarctica. It just goes together surprisingly well, and back in February, UFO enthusiasts claimed to have discovered what looks like a crashed extraterrestrial on a 6-mile wide island called Tuhamuk. The object, which some internet users believe to be a UFO, looks sorta like it has a domed top, wide rim, sort of a metallic appearance maybe. It seems to measure around 12 meters in width. The image of the object first showed up on Reddit, and it got people talking. Some are convinced that the shape and smoothness of the object can't be, or is at least very unlikely to be, a natural formation. There's comments like, it's obviously a craft, look at how smooth the curvature is. Another commenter wrote, if being eroded by a wave, it would not keep a consistent shape like that, and certainly not poking out the opposite way, and even indenting in behind it, forming a perfect circle. The ones saying that it's ice are completely ignoring these facts. This is a wonderful find, end quote. Now, of course, others are dismissing it as just an interesting looking block of ice, but what do you all think? Operation Tabarin was a top-secret British mission during World War II, which ran from 1943 to 46. Its goal was to secure British control over parts of Antarctica that were contested by Argentina and Chile. To do this, the British set up permanent research stations and conducted scientific work, while also providing postal services and supporting weather observations, which were important for Allied shipping routes in the South Atlantic. The operation kicked off in 1943, right in the middle of the war, after the British government approved it. The team, led by Lieutenant Commander James Marr, set off from the UK in November that year, and by early 1944, they'd established 2 main bases. In 1944, Captain Andrew Taylor took over the operation after Marr had to step down due to illness. New bases were set up, and they also brought sled dogs to help with the work and extended their research on the Antarctic mainland. During the winter months of 1944 and 45, the teams at the base faced extreme conditions, with 14 men staying through the winter in 1941 and 1944 and 21 the following year. By March of 1946, the mission came to an end though, and the work was handed over to the Falkland Islands Dependencies Survey, or the FIDS. This laid the foundation though for what would later become the British Antarctic Survey, or BAS, which still carries out scientific research in Antarctica to this day. But some think there's more to the story than what's been officially released. Some think Operation Tabarin also had a lot to do with monitoring a secret base built by the Third Reich. Now, while it is 100% true that the Germans had disguised ships sailing the Pacific to disrupt Allied shipping, some straying into the colder waters of the South Pole, there have also been rumors for decades that they established a secret base on the mainland. This theory goes way back to the aftermath of World War II and is often tied to ideas about high-ranking German officials escaping to Antarctica after the war, including the leader himself. The story got more attention when people claimed that a German U-boat was spotted in the South Atlantic in July of 1945, just months after Germany's surrender. The rumor really started to pick up in 1947, when a Hungarian named Ladislas Szabó suggested that the Germans had built a hidden base in Antarctica, possibly as a refuge or secret base to continue carrying out their work. The Germans did 100% briefly visit Antarctica in 1939. Supposedly it was only for a short time as part of a surveying expedition, but could they have established something more permanent? It's possible. Now, Antarctica today might be a frozen wasteland, but it wasn't always that way. In the distant past, long before it was covered by thick ice, Antarctica was a lush, warm region that was actually full of rainforests. There have been fossils discovered in the area that show millions of years ago the continent was full of tropical trees, forests, and it was full of animal life. One of the most fascinating discoveries are the fossilized wood and leaf imprints. Fossils from marine creatures, birds, even dinosaurs from the Cretaceous period have been found. It's hard to imagine now, but at one time Antarctica was very biodiverse. Scientists have also found the preserved forewings of beetles that lived between 14 and 20 million years ago, and tiny single-celled fossils. And here's a really strange one. They've even found 50-million-year-old sperm cells on the egg case of an extinct species of worm. But you don't need to look to the distant past to find fascinating ecosystems in Antarctica. Turns out that beneath the ice sheets, there's an entire network of underground lakes. In 1970, scientists first detected the existence of these lakes using radar technology, and it turns out there are about 400 subglacial lakes scattered across the continent. The lakes are found under several kilometers of ice, and they've been kept liquid because of the intense pressure from the ice sheet above it. The weight of the ice actually prevents the water from freezing, despite, being in Antarctica. One of the most famous of these lakes is Lake Vostok, which was discovered by Russian scientists in the 90s. It is the largest subglacial lake in Antarctica and the third largest lake in the world by volume, sitting about 3.5 kilometers or over 2 miles under the ice. What makes Lake Vostok especially cool, though, is that it's been sealed off from the outside world for over 20 million years. But in recent years, scientists have drilled into the ice to get samples from the lake and other subglacial lakes in Antarctica, and they found some cool stuff. In 2014, for example, scientists studying Lake Whillans, nearly a kilometer beneath the ice, found this active ecosystem of microorganisms living in the lake. The tiny creatures have been totally isolated from sunlight and fresh air for millions of years. Is what you're looking at here a natural formation? Well, it's fun to imagine that it isn't, that at some point in the distant past, pyramids similar to the ones in Egypt were built by some long-lost civilization in Antarctica. And to be fair, there are some pretty incredible looking pyramid-like formations in Antarctica that look almost too perfect to be naturally forming, but the pyramid-like structure is officially part of a mountain range called the Ellsworth Mountains, the highest mountain range in Antarctica. They were first discovered during the British Antarctic expedition expedition of 1910 to 1913. A mountain peak poking out of the ice, certainly less interesting than an ancient alien pyramid, so I don't think the rumors and speculations are going anywhere, especially because there's lots of other strange stuff said to go on in Antarctica. But here's something really unsettling about the region. All the dangerous stuff frozen in the ice that could cause problems if it were to thaw out. Scientists have dug up ancient ice cores and found bacteria that have been frozen solid. These bacteria can go into kind of a deep freeze mode where they don't really do anything but sit, waiting for better conditions. When the ice thaws, these bacteria can sometimes wake up, if you will, and start growing again though. In 2007, scientists in Antarctica found microorganisms trapped in ice that had been frozen for up to 8 million years. The tiny life forms were stuck in the ice, basically in a deep freeze, and when they were brought back to the warm lab, they began coming back to life and started to grow again. Scientists have also found old viruses frozen in layers of ice and permafrost. These viruses could be tens of thousands of years old, preserved in a state of suspended animation. Again though, they can potentially come back to life if the ice melts. When researchers thaw out samples from the ice, they can sometimes get these ancient viruses to reactivate. Seems like a bad idea, but understanding these viruses helps scientists learn more about how life and pathogens have evolved over time. Of course though, there's a lot of risk involved, and these viruses being released in an uncontrolled way could be very, very bad. Kimberly Miner, a climate scientist at the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory at the California Institute of Technology in Pasadena, say that 5 times fast, well, she had this to say: "There's a lot going on with the permafrost that is of concern, and it really shows why it's super important that we keep as much of the permafrost frozen as possible." No kidding. Alright, so in 2019, a team of researchers made a pretty mind-blowing discovery in the Scotia Sea, just north of Antarctica. They were part of the International Ocean Discovery Program, and while they were drilling into the seafloor, they ended up finding ancient DNA buried about 584 feet under the ocean floor. The researchers were able to figure out that this DNA was about 1 million years old, making it the oldest DNA ever discovered in seafloor sediments. Before this, the oldest DNA found in the sediments was only about 650,000 years old, so yeah, they shattered that record. You might think it's crazy that DNA could survive for so long, especially sitting at the bottom of the ocean, but Antarctica's cold temperatures helped preserve it. Plus, the deep sea doesn't get much sunlight, so the DNA wasn't damaged by harmful UV radiation like it would be if it were exposed on land. The big mystery, though, is what species this DNA came from. The researchers aren't entirely sure yet, but they know it's not from a virus or a bacteria. So this discovery opens up all sorts of cool possibilities. What kind of life was living in Antarctica a million years ago, and what else could be hidden deep beneath the ice and ocean? Only time and more research will tell.
The Antarctic Impulsive Transient Antenna, or ANITA, is a device that measures cosmic rays, more specifically the high-energy neutrinos that come off them. ANITA floated on a balloon high above the Antarctic ice sheet, gazing at the stars for several years. So imagine the researchers' shock when the instruments meant to read energy coming from the stars detected those same high-energy neutrinos coming up from the Earth. Now, low-energy neutrinos can pass through quite a bit of material, as they are very small and can pass through the gaps in atoms. But high-energy neutrinos have a much larger footprint and are more easily deflected and intercepted. So how did these relatively easy to deflect neutrinos come up through the Earth? Did they pass all the way through, or is there another explanation? Scientists have proposed everything from neutrinos passing all the way through the planet or getting reflected around inside like an inverse disco ball, to a discovery of an entirely new neutrino or even dark matter. However, others think the answer is much more mundane. The neutrinos simply came down from outer space, missing ANITA, and then entered the Antarctic ice, where they hit a sort of compacted snow called firn. Firn is between glacial ice and snow, and can have pockets of low or high density, which may allow it to reflect neutrinos back up towards space. Scientists still aren't really sure what's going on though. Next is Shackleton's ship. Ernest Shackleton is one of the great explorers of world history, having made his fame off of the rather disastrous attempt to reach the South Pole with his ship Endurance. It wasn't his first trip to Antarctica, and far from his first time in the cold, but this time time the ship got stuck in an ice floe. The crew would spend 2 months on the ice before managing to make an equally long journey to rescue, but the ship was swallowed whole by the floe, and then vanished into the cruel Antarctic Sea. You'd be forgiven for thinking the ship had sunk, totally destroyed, and would never be seen again, but you'd be wrong. In the mid-1960s, another ship went searching for the Endurance, tracing her path, and would get to see a once-in-a-lifetime event. The ice floe heaved, split, and spat forth the Endurance, her hull pushed high into the sky before she was sucked back under the ice and vanished for good. In 2022, researchers would successfully discover the wreckage beneath the ice, scanning it through the crust for a 3D rendering. Being stuck beneath dangerous sea ice 3 kilometers under the surface, it is likely Endurance will remain there for the rest of history. Next is the green crab crisis. Green crab are some of the most successful colonizers in the animal kingdom. Rapidly adaptable, small enough to survive anywhere, often in large numbers, and very successful predators, these crabs can take up roots just about anywhere the water is the right temperature for them to live in. So you might think it's a little silly to bring a whole bunch of them and start farming them off the coast of Chile, and now, several years after that decision was made, we know it was a bad idea. Green crab have been swarming up the Pacific coast of the Americas, devastating several ecosystems. But they also taste delicious, so it isn't too bad. It's not like there's nothing that eats crabs along the Pacific coast anyways, but Antarctica is a different story. For now, the waters are too cold for the green crab to push that far south, but if we know anything about the future, it's that the world's waters will warm more. And as they do, the crabs will slowly flood south, or get picked up and carried in the ballast of ships, and Antarctica will eventually be infested with them. Antarctica is a unique environment, with much less diversity and competition to halt the spread of the green crab, which makes it especially dangerous and vulnerable. So far as we know, Antarctica is currently free of green crab influence, but that may not last long. Next is Totten Glacier. Melting sea ice is one of the greatest threats to the world's oceans. It raises sea levels, decreases salinity, and introduces more cold water than would normally be in the ocean. But recently scientists discovered something even more chilling. A massive glacier field in Antarctica known as the Totten Glacier Catchment, which is under serious threat. The ice field is larger than the more famous West Antarctic ice sheet, and should be less of a threat due to its size and therefore inherent stability, except it isn't stable. Deep sea channels beneath the ice are pumping warm water into the underside of the glacier, encouraging it to melt faster than it should. Should the entire field melt, global sea levels would rise 11 feet, destroying numerous cities around the world. Next is Mod Rise Polynia. The Antarctic ice sheet may look smooth and pristine from the air, but it is absolutely not. It's filled with small holes and cracks which are known as polynia. Polynia are complex and can occur for a vast variety of reasons, often many of which are deeply interconnected. Mod Rise Polynia is, however, one of the largest and most sudden polynias ever to appear. It practically appeared overnight, like a sudden gash in the ice sheet larger than the country of Wales. Unlike other polynias which come and go, however, Mod Rise has not shrunk, resealed, or vanished. It's believed that a strong current, strengthened by unusually warm and salty water, encountered the deep sea mountain of Mod Rise, which then drove this current up its face and into the ice sheet above. This new warm water current is then thought to have pushed the ice apart, opening up this strange and massive gash in the sheet. It's unknown how long the ice will stay this way, but it will likely be for decades if not longer. Then again, with how quickly the world's climate is changing, scientists really can't make any certain predictions. Next is the ice storm. Antarctica is one of the most remote and isolated places on Earth. Only a handful of people are allowed to visit on tours, and even fewer are chosen to live on the continent. So it's no wonder Antarctic ghost stories have a special flavor of terror. In 2016, a small outpost was rocked with a storm, and the 3 occupants were trapped inside the squall. The storm was a big one, set to last weeks, and so the crew hunkered down. It didn't take long for the first cracks to show, even amongst these professional researchers. After a week of complaining of a growing whining and speaking in his head, Mike Leash was eventually scrabbling at the doors, even as his colleagues tried to restrain him, and eventually bursted out into the storm. Despite their desire to save his life, none of the crew was going to go out into a zero-visibility Antarctic ice storm, and Mike disappeared. The storm cooled off 2 days later, leaving the world covered covered in a thick coating of snow. The crew went out to find what happened to Mike, only to see him standing just 100 steps from the front door. When they approached him, though, they were shocked to find it was just his clothes, frozen solid and completely empty of Mike's body. Despite a recovery attempt, Mike was not able to be found. It's thought he may have stripped while hypothermic and then been buried under the snowstorm, but why then would his clothes be standing in place? Something strange happened here. And finally is the Wilkes gravity anomaly. A negative gravity anomaly was detected under the ice of Wilkes Land, and it has scientists stumped. It may sound a little sci-fi, but there are actually gravitational anomalies all over the world, and they can help us discover some pretty interesting things. If the Earth were actually a totally smooth, consistent ball, then gravity would be experienced the same all over the planet. But the Earth isn't smooth, and gravity is not consistent. These gravitational anomalies are small shifts away from the predicted ideal gravitational value, and can be used to find dense ore deposits beneath the Earth's surface. Other things can also cause anomalies though, like caves or caverns where the Earth isn't as dense as it hypothetically should be. A positive anomaly means gravity is stronger than expected there, maybe due to a mountain or dense elements underground, while a negative gravitational anomaly means gravity is weaker than expected. This could be for any number of reasons, but usually an unseen void in the Earth is the culprit. In the case of the Wilkes gravity anomaly, scientists still aren't really sure what's causing it. However, the most plausible theory is that of an old meteor crater that was then frozen over by the ice from the Ice Age. Still, no one is really truly sure what is causing this anomaly.
The Cabagon. On April 28th of 1974, off the coast of Littleton, New Zealand, a Japanese fishing vessel, the 28th Kamparamaru, was out doing its thing, but this day would be unlike any other. At around 7 p.m., all 28 crew members, including Captain Kimura, spotted something massive in the water. Whatever it was had a head that stuck out of the water, and even though they could only see the top of whatever this beast was, they could tell it was an absolute monster. The head alone was about 1.5 meters tall. The creature had these giant, spooky eyes on top, and some crew members thought they saw what looked like a second set of eyes, or maybe nostrils, right beneath. The texture was described as either rough and hairy or scaled with spikes. It was a bit like a gigantic spider head mixed with a sea monster. Captain Kimura even sketched the thing, and it later made headlines in the New Zealand Weekly magazine. Nearby, mysterious footprints were found on the beach. This beastie was soon linked to other cryptids in Japanese waters like the giant sea ghost, Umibazu, and the Antarctic Godzilla. More on him in a bit. But the Cabagon has to be one of the strangest sea cryptids ever reported. The colossal squid is believed to be the largest squid in terms of sheer mass. We're talking about a creature that can grow up to 39 to 46 feet long, and it's not just long, it's also built like a tank, unlike its more famous cousin, the giant squid, which are pretty incredible already. The colossal squid actually has hooks on its tentacles though, some swiveling, others three-pointed, and those hooks are sharp, designed to hold on to prey with this grip-like vice. The colossal squid's beak is the largest of any known squid, bigger than that of the giant squid, and its eyes are the biggest in the animal kingdom, with one specimen having eyes about 11 inches across. These creatures weren't found to actually exist until 1925, when 2 of its tentacles were found in a sperm whale's stomach. Sightings go way back though, but they were thought of the same way creatures like Nessie are, legends and myths. In 1802, a massive squid was spotted in Tasmania, way before anyone officially recognized the giant squid. Then in 1870, a huge squid carcass washed ashore in New Zealand, with locals calling it a tanewa. More sightings and washed up squid parts continued to pop up in the following decades. By 1924, just a year before the colossal squid was officially identified, another giant squid was spotted near Bluff, New Zealand. We know these colossal squids exist now, but we've never retrieved any massive sized carcasses, just ones on the smaller end of the scale. But somewhere deep in the waters off the coast of Antarctica, there are gargantuan squids, possibly even bigger than our current estimates. The large Antarctic sea mammal, also known as the Antarctic Godzilla. So the story goes that on February 13th of 1958, the Japanese research vessel Soya Nihongo was cruising through Antarctica's icy waters when around 7 p.m. the crew spotted something massive in Letsao Bay. This thing was giant. The captain of the ship would go on to dub the creature the Antarctic Godzilla because to him it looked a lot like Godzilla. Now, I love my giant monster movies, Mothra, Gigan, the whole gang. Not the type of movie characters I'd like to encounter in real life though. If I found out the Ninja Turtles were chilling in the sewers below Manhattan, that would be a great day for me. A real life Godzilla rising from the water to wreak havoc on the Japanese public wouldn't be a boring news day, but not good. There's not a ton of info on this case. The sighting was brief and the creature disappeared before anyone could get a clear look or photo, but the nickname stuck, and some say this creature could have been the same as the Kamagon that I spoke about earlier. The notorious bloop recording. We've all heard of this, but if you're thinking it can all be explained away as glacial ice, think again, there could be more to it than that. For those not in the know, the bloop was an eerie, unexplained sound that was recorded in 1997. When the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration picked up a powerful underwater noise in the South Pacific. This sound was incredibly low frequency and very loud. The mysterious sound was dubbed the bloop, and nobody knew what it was. Some thought it might be from a massive, undiscovered sea creature. But in 2012, the NOAA figured that the bloop was actually just similar to noises made by shifting ice. The bloop was detected several times by an array of hydrophones designed to listen for undersea activity. The NOAA concluded that the sound matched patterns produced by ice quakes rather than some giant sea creature, but till this day not everyone is convinced. Some argue that the bloop's sound patterns are just too specific, pointing to it coming from some yet to be discovered animal. Are there walruses in the southern hemisphere? Well, not officially anyway, but there have been some very odd sightings over the years. Sightings of what have been dubbed southern walruses. Victorian naturalist James Hector, who was no stranger to odd animal reports, collected stories about walrus-like creatures spotted around New Zealand. Hector even speculated that these creatures might be lurking among the Antarctic ice flows. He thought if these areas were explored more extensively, they might uncover these walruses as well as other unknown animals. Thor Heyerdahl, the famous explorer, also had thoughts on this, saying that a Maori myth about a tusked merman might have actually been based on sightings of these mysterious southern hemisphere walruses. And there are other mentions of tusked creatures in the region. Historical records mention tusked marine mammals off South Africa. In Francois Legat's Voyage and Adventures from 1707, Legat described seeing a large red sea cow with long tusks off the Cape of Good Hope. Then in 1852, we have Hugh de Bonley's sighting off Isla San Lorenzo in Peru. He saw a giant tusked seal described as having a seal-like head with two huge white tusks. With all these strange sightings and historical records, could there really be something out there lurking in the icy depths that we still don't fully understand? But walruses aren't the only out-of-place animals reported to show up in the southern hemisphere. Narwhals have as well. Back in 1615, Dutch explorer Willem Schouten had a close encounter when his ship was attacked by an unknown beast. The next day, they found a horn lodged in the ship about a foot long. Then in 1785, a French general reported seeing two dark porpoise-like animals south of Africa. He described them having a horn about 1.5 feet long and noted a high fin, which is odd since narwhals usually have a bony ridge. In 1892, the ship Balena spotted a narwhal near the Bransfield Strait, pretty close to Antarctica. And these were experienced whalers who all said what they saw was definitely a narwhal, or at least looked a hell of a lot like one. In recent years, Antarctica has been the focus of some pretty wild conspiracy theories, one of which is that there are secret government facilities dedicated to the study of aliens and their technology. The remote and inhospitable climate of Antarctica would make for an ideal cover for secretive activities, and some conspiracy theorists point to satellite images and unusual geological formations in Antarctica as evidence of possible hidden alien bases. Some believe that there are massive pyramid-type structures buried under the ice that may have been built by some ancient civilization, possibly with the help of aliens, or just built by aliens themselves who once inhabited the Earth, setting up bases in the South Pole. The governments of the world are rumored to have secret research facilities in Antarctica to study alien technology. Some even claim that these facilities have made contact with extraterrestrial beings. It's very hard to believe, but I'd like to think so. The Ningen is another more modern legend that's caught quite a bit of attention online in the last couple decades. Ningen, which means human in Japanese, is a creature supposedly lurking in the sub-Antarctic oceans. There are two main ways people describe the Ningen. The first is a massive whale-like creature with a humanoid face and giant limbs, said to be around 65 to 100 feet long. The second description is a lot less common, a smaller land-dwelling creature with a big head and humanoid legs. It's said to be pale blue with a big slit mouth and either small or gaping eyes. In 2007, there was a very interesting post made on the Japanese forum 2channel. According to the post, a whale research ship spotted this giant creature near their vessel off the Antarctic coast. The crew initially thought it was a submarine, but when they got closer, it vanished under the waves. Then in 2005, some folks claimed Google Earth caught a glimpse of what they thought was a Ningen in the Southern Ocean. Skeptics argued it was just an iceberg that sorta looked like a sea monster, but then there's the 2010 Enoshima Aquarium incident. The aquarium had posted a video to YouTube with footage of the deep ocean, and towards the end, several viewers spotted what looked like this eerie thing. It almost looked like a creature with a big smiling mouth and little eyes. A lot of commenters said it looked a lot like depictions of the Ningen. The aquarium later said it was just an unusual rock formation with sponges making up what looked like eyes, but some still find the footage undeniably creepy and even think there could be more to this video than the aquarium is letting on.
Alright, first things first, what is the Piri Reis map? Well, it's a world map drawn on gazelle skin written in 1513 that really shouldn't exist. Why? Well, because it depicts recently discovered places and even undiscovered places with a surprising amount of accuracy, which is of course virtually impossible, but somehow it's possible. I mean, clearly it's possible, the thing exists, doesn't it? But like how? Well, I'm glad you asked. It is believed that the map was created using 8 Greco-Roman maps, 4 Portuguese maps, an Arabic map, and 1 drawn by Christopher Columbus himself. Today the map, which supposedly discovered and described Antarctica centuries before anyone else in the world, is kept in Topkapi Palace in Istanbul. Well, part of it is. You see, the entire map has never been viewed in modern times, only 1/3 of it. The rest is yet to be found. It makes you wonder though, what else could we have gotten wrong about our history? Maybe one day we'll find out.
The Piri Reis map was discovered by accident in 1929 during renovations at the Topkapi Palace in Turkey. The palace was being converted into a museum when researchers stumbled on it tucked away in a dusty corner. What they found was a fragment of an ancient world map by Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis. Piri Reis was not only a skilled sailor but also a cartographer, and he had meticulously compiled this map using, as Anna described, a number of older maps. The parts of the map that still exist show parts of Europe, Africa, the Americas, and of course, Antarctica, potentially. We'll get to that in a bit though. And for a map created over 500 years ago, this is pretty amazing, as Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1820 and wasn't mapped out until later, so there are tons of questions and theories surrounding the Piri Reis map. Does it contain knowledge from some lost ancient civilization or aliens? How's the thing so advanced? Now that you have some context, we're to get into the weeds.
Alright, let's talk about continental drift, shall we? That's right, according to the Piri Reis map, at one point in time Antarctica was actually not all that cold, and also it was connected to South America, which is insane, but not in the way you think. The idea that Antarctica was once connected to South America makes total sense. I mean, the world used to consist of one single landmass that eventually broke away to form continents. What's insane is that the map was able to depict that. Now, I previously mentioned that Antarctica wasn't discovered until long after this map was completed, but perhaps it was. It just wasn't its own thing yet. I mean, it's entirely possible. And it's not like the map shows a frigid Antarctica nestled up next to the subtropical South Americas. The two appear to share the same climate and weather patterns. There is no ice depicted on Antarctica in this map, but more on that after this.
One of the biggest mysteries about the Piri Reis map is its lines. Now, the map doesn't have the latitude and longitude lines you see on modern maps, which run east, west, north, and south. Today, we can measure longitude and latitude accurately using GPS and precise clocks, but in the early 1500s, when this map was created, this was almost impossible. The problem with measuring longitude back then was that it required knowing the exact time at two different places simultaneously. Sailors could measure latitude using the sun and stars, but without a reliable way to keep track of time, determining longitude was a huge challenge. The invention that finally solved this problem was the marine chronometer, which was a special clock that kept accurate time at sea, but this wasn't invented until about 200 years after Piri Reis created his map. But the Piri Reis map does have what are called azimuth lines, which end up being strangely very accurate to modern maps, to the point where it seems virtually impossible for the map to have been created when it was. So, how did Piri Reis manage to create a map with such accuracy for the time? Well, we'll be getting into theories in a bit.
Alright, let's get back to climate, specifically Antarctica's climate, and even more specifically Antarctica's climate at the time in which this map was created. A climate that was subtropical and supported a lush rainforest filled with various coniferous trees, flowering plants, giant mushrooms, and animals. While this might sound crazy to some, the map shows Antarctica connected to the subtropical region of South America, so it must be true. Well, no, an ancient map does not the truth make. But what does prove the existence of an ancient rainforest existing in Antarctica and also validate the Piri Reis map is a core sample taken by scientists in Antarctica in 2017 that shows every layer of sediment that has settled on the continent over the past 90 million years, give or take. Ancient root systems perfectly preserved in soil samples along with traces of pollen, spores, and the remains of flowering plants were all found in the core sample. From this, scientists were able to determine what the weather would have been like in order to support such a wide range of life. Heavy rainfall and heightened levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, i.e., it would have been a rainforest.
Now, the pieces of the map we still have today don't show Antarctica in full. We're not even 100% sure if Piri Reis was depicting Antarctica or just assuming there was some landmass there that didn't really exist. Like Hannah mentioned, there's a depiction near the southern tip of South America on the map. Instead of accurately showing the continent's true shape, it bends eastward and takes up a big portion of the map's lower half. Some think it's a mistake, some think it is an early interpretation of Antarctica. Again, it's not shown having ice, contrary to what we know today. Antarctica has been covered in ice for millions of years. It was only ice-free during prehistoric times. So a lot of historians think that what's actually shown on the Piri Reis map is his assumption of what the South American continent might have looked like.
Alright, hear me out for a sec, because there are some theories surrounding how the hell some random man named Piri Reis was able to map the world so accurately in the year 1513 with no aerial views or GPS devices. And of course, one of those theories is aliens, or some kind of advanced ancient civilization that far surpassed the abilities of humans in ancient times and possibly the ability of humans today. Who knows? As I said, the Piri Reis map was discovered in 1929, in the early 20th century, and it is believed to date back to the 16th century, circa 1513. Not only would it have been incredibly difficult to have mapped out Antarctica, an undiscovered continent, back in the 16th century, it was also incredibly hard to do it in 1929 as well. Why? Well, because Antarctica was only discovered in 1820 and it wasn't mapped out until 1983. So what the heck did Piri Reis have that we didn't until 470 years later? Well, perhaps some help from an advanced extraterrestrial being or ancient civilization with access to air travel and advanced mapping technologies. I mean, I know it sounds far-fetched, but like really, how could anyone have created this map back then with no help? I just don't buy it. I don't think he deserves all the credit.
Let's talk more about that theory about a highly advanced but lost ancient civilization creating the map, or at least, giving some of their knowledge and expertise. Along with the maps Piri Reis collected from around the world, he could have had access to ancient maps or texts from lost civilizations who had advanced knowledge of geography and map making. As for what this civilization could have been, go wild. Obviously, though, Atlantis gets theorized about the most. This could explain why large chunks of the map are missing, or why so much of the information in it predates stuff we only thought became common knowledge many, many years later. Who knows, it may have all gone down with Atlantis. It's a fun idea.
Another interesting thing about the Piri Reis map is that it's possible that some of it was written in code, and therefore there is some of it that we might not understand or may have possibly misinterpreted, meaning there may still be secrets hidden within the map waiting to be uncovered. Only problem is, as I said, only 1/3 of the map has been found to date. So while it is entirely possible that the world comes together and pieces the entire thing back together, with the location of each piece possibly being a clue to cracking the hidden code drawn out on the ancient hide, it's also entirely possible that the secrets of Piri Reis's world map, the second world map, are unfortunately lost to the world forever. Either that, or there's actually just no code and no secrets, and the whole thing is just some boring, incredibly accurate, super advanced anomaly. But where's the fun in that?
And, in terms of codes and stuff, there could be another aspect to this, a more symbolic interpretation here. Some hidden meanings to the map other than just geography. Some experts and enthusiasts of the map think that there could be areas drawn or named that might carry meanings more rooted in ancient beliefs or cultural ideas. For example, ancient cities or mythical creatures that are depicted on the map could have represented political power at the time, religious significance, or even navigational clues that were only understood by sailors of that time. The symbols and intricate details on the map has led to some speculation that it might have been more than just a practical tool for navigation. It could have been more of a canvas for expressing knowledge about the world that went beyond what was known publicly. Some even wonder if it might have encoded secrets or esoteric knowledge known to only select groups or societies back then. Who knows?
Our first discovery takes us to Lake Vostok, one of the largest subglacial lakes in the world. Buried under nearly 4 kilometers of ice, this hidden reservoir has been isolated from the surface for an estimated 15 to 25 million years. Scientists are fascinated by its unique environment, as it's like a natural time capsule where ancient water and possibly even undiscovered microbial life have been preserved away from the outside world. Advanced radar and ice-penetrating sonar have mapped its dimensions, revealing a vast, still body of water that challenges our understanding of life's adaptability. Researchers believe that by studying Lake Vostok, we could gain insights into how life might survive in extreme conditions, not just on Earth, but also on other icy worlds like Jupiter's moon, Europa. Next up, deep beneath the Antarctic ice lies a mountain range you'd never expect to find, the Gamburtsev Mountains. Discovered through sophisticated radar surveys during the Cold War era, these mountains are roughly the same size as the European Alps, yet they remain completely concealed beneath thousands of meters of ice. Their formation played a crucial role in shaping the Antarctic ice sheet, acting as a sort of seed around which the ice would accumulate. What makes the Gamburtsev Mountains so intriguing is not only their size, but also their geological complexity. These ancient peaks may hold clues to the continent's past climate, tectonic movements, and even the processes that led to the formation of the icy landscape we see today. Antarctica isn't just a frozen wasteland, it's also a land of hidden fire. Scientists have uncovered evidence of active subglacial volcanoes beneath the ice, particularly in West Antarctica. These volcanoes, unlike the well-known Mount Erebus on Ross Island, lie completely under the ice sheet and have been detected by unusual heat signatures and seismic activity. The geothermal energies from these volcanoes can melt the base of the ice, potentially influencing how the ice flows and even contributing to the formation of subglacial lakes. Understanding these volcanic hotspots is crucial not only for piecing together Antarctica's geological past, but also for predicting future changes in the ice sheet dynamics that could have have global implications. Imagine a network of rivers winding beneath a colossal ice sheet. Sounds kind of like something out of a movie, right? But that is exactly what scientists have found. Beneath the Antarctic ice, hidden channels and rivers transport meltwater from the surface to subglacial lakes and back again. One prominent example is the Whillans subglacial river system, a complex drainage network that plays a key role in shaping the overlying ice's movement. Using radar imaging and satellite data, researchers have been able to map these intricate water systems, which not only influence the flow of the ice, but also create potential habitats for unique microbial communities. These secret rivers are a reminder that even in the coldest, most isolated places on Earth, liquid water and the life it can support finds a way. There is a wild conspiracy theory floating around that claims Antarctica hides an ancient, lush forest beneath its ice, a relic from a time when the continent was warm and green. Let's unpack this idea. It is a fact that Antarctica wasn't always the frozen desert we see today. During the era of Gondwana, parts of the continent boasted flourishing forests, and fossilized wood and plant remnants discovered in exposed regions confirm this verdant past. However, these findings date back tens of millions of years. They're evidence of ancient ecosystems, not a currently living forest preserved under the ice. Some conspiracy theorists point to unusual radar reflections and satellite imagery as proof of modern-day vegetation hidden beneath the ice. In reality, these anomalous signals are most likely the result of unique rock formations, subglacial water channels, or even variations in the ice itself, not patches of ancient trees or under-ice canopies. No credible scientific study has provided evidence to support the existence of a preserved extant forest under Antarctica today. One of the most thrilling discoveries beneath Antarctica is the existence of thriving microbial ecosystems in places once thought too harsh for life. In subglacial lakes like Vostok and Whillans, scientists have detected microbial communities that survive in complete darkness, extreme cold, and under crushing pressure. These extremophiles use chemical energy from minerals, a process known as chemosynthesis, to thrive in an environment devoid of sunlight. Studying these resilient organisms not only deepens our understanding of life's boundaries on Earth, but also opens up fascinating possibilities for finding life on other icy worlds. Their unique adaptations might even hold clues to ancient evolutionary pathways, offering a glimpse into how life can persist under the most unlikely circumstances. Beneath the surface of Antarctica, ice cores serve as frozen archives of our planet's climate history. Scientists drill deep into the ice to extract cylinders that contain layers deposited over hundreds of thousands of years. These ice cores trap tiny bubbles of ancient air, volcanic ash, and even cosmic dust, providing an unparalleled record of Earth's past atmospheric conditions. By analyzing these layers, researchers can reconstruct temperature changes, greenhouse gas concentrations, and even periods of intense volcanic activity. This meticulous work has been instrumental in understanding how Earth's climate has evolved over millennia, offering critical insights into current climate change trends and helping predict future shifts in our global environment. While the icy surface of Antarctica may appear uniform, the geology beneath it tells a much more complex story. Detailed geophysical surveys have revealed unexpected rock formations and the presence of rare minerals that hint at a dynamic geological past. In areas like the Gamburtsev Mountains, scientists have identified metamorphic rocks that were formed under extreme pressure and temperature conditions, suggesting that parts of Antarctica were once subjected to tectonic forces similar to those that form major mountain ranges elsewhere in the world. These findings not only challenge our preconceptions about Antarctica's geological history, but also open up new avenues of research into the processes that shape our planet during its most formative years. It's a reminder that even the most remote corners of Earth can surprise us with their rich, hidden stories. Antarctica isn't just a treasure trove of terrestrial secrets, it's also one of the best places on Earth to find meteorites. Thanks to the continent's dry, cold conditions and moving ice, meteorites that fall to the surface often become exposed in blue ice fields, where they stand out against the white background. Scientists have recovered hundreds of these space rocks, which provide invaluable clues about the early solar system and the building blocks of our own planet. Some of these meteorites are so well preserved that they allow researchers to analyze the isotopic composition and the mineral content of materials that predate Earth's formation. These extraterrestrial visitors offer a rare glimpse into our cosmic past and underscore the role Antarctica plays as a natural repository of the universe's ancient history. Our final discovery brings us back to the microscopic world, where complex chemical interactions create thriving ecosystems under the ice. This hidden web of life is sustained by energy sources such as iron, sulfur, and even heat from nearby volcanic activity. The resulting ecosystems are not only fascinating in their own right, but also serve as analogues for potential life in similar extreme environments beyond Earth. As researchers continue to uncover the intricate biogeochemical cycles at work beneath Antarctica, they're challenging our understanding of what it takes to sustain life in the harshest conditions. These findings may one day help us to identify signs of life on icy moons and exoplanets, expanding our horizons far beyond our own planet.
First on our list today, we have the discovery and revival of an ancient virus freed from the Antarctic permafrost after 48,500 years. Oh my gosh, have we learned nothing from sci-fi and television? You do not restore ancient viruses. You don't do it. Well, they did it. The zombie virus was discovered as a result of melting ice in the Antarctic region after laying dormant for tens of thousands of years. And honestly, scientists believe that while the risks are low, much like your ex, it does raise red flags as a potential endangerment to human health. The virus was returned to its former infectious glory in a lab after being inserted with cultured cells. Luckily for us, as of yet, scientists have only attempted to reanimate viruses that target single-cell amoebas, not humans or animals. That's great and all, but it still seems like pretty risky business to me. The scientist who performed the reanimation maintains he has done so to shed light on the potential risk of more dangerous viruses' ability to resurface and affect humans should the Antarctic permafrost continue to melt. Not only that, but as the ice continues to thaw, it also has the potential to release chemical and radioactive waste into our ecosystems. So, think about that. Next up, we have the discovery of a hidden landmass frozen in time and ice and estimated to be bigger than Belgium. The landscape consists of hills and valleys believed to have been carved by ancient rivers over millions of years ago. Its existence was confirmed using a technique called radio echo sounding, which uses sound waves to determine distances, based off of which corresponding maps of underground structures and landscapes can be created. Without even laying eyes on an area, we are able to determine the heights of its peaks and the depths of its deepest points. The area of land stretching 32,000 square kilometers, 12,000 square miles, is a scientific marvel, as scientists believe its climate and geology to have been massively different from that of modern-day Antarctica. Which of course brings me to my next point. Also discovered within the ice and hidden beneath the frozen desert were the remains of an estimated 90 million year old subtropical rainforest. Scientists were so excited when, deep beneath the ice, they discovered an incredibly well-preserved network of root systems within a sediment core sample. A sediment core sample is basically like a ground extraction that shows all the layers of sediment that have settled over the last, I guess in this case, 90 million years. Not only did they find root systems, but the soil was so well preserved that they were also able to find traces of pollen, spores, and the remains of flowering plants. Based on these findings, it was concluded that the coast of West Antarctica at one point in time contained a thick, swampy rainforest which was home to a large variety of plant and animal species. Scientists also concluded weather patterns of heavy rainfall and heightened levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Next on the list we have BLOOD Falls. I apologize for having to spell it out for you. I don't think I'm allowed to say that word on here, but just by the look, I'm sure you can guess where the name comes from. So let's talk about the color. If you want to guess how it happens, I'll give you a moment. Maybe pause the video, head to the comments, lock in your answer. You done? Okay, the answer is iron, but not in the way you'd think. The red waters are rich in iron, but they don't actually turn red until they come into contact with the air. Well, maybe you did think that, but let me explain further. It's actually a mix of iron oxides and hydroxides along with high salt content in the water, chlorine and magnesium that give the river flow its yellow, orange and reddish coloring rather than the classic like murky brown we would usually see coming out of eroded sink faucets. Super creepy, but again, super cool. Next up we have the discovery of ancient bacteria like nothing we've ever seen on Earth before. Like, it's so strange, scientists wonder if it might possibly have come from like outer space. Perhaps a passenger on an ancient asteroid that arrived on Earth millions of years ago. And why do they think that? Well, because generally bacteria has a minimum requirement of 6 things it needs in order to survive, and those things are food, acidity, time, generally a warm temperature, oxygen, and moisture. But this bacteria just needs air, making it an absolute scientific anomaly and a massive discovery that moves us forward in our understanding of the way in which extraterrestrial organisms might be able to survive on other planets and in space. What do you guys think? As we move past our halfway point, let's go beneath the ice all the way down to the Antarctic seafloor, where the once lost ship Endurance was discovered in impeccable condition, preserved by the country's icy waters. For a long time, the Endurance shipwreck remained one of the greatest undiscovered mysteries, but that all changed in 2022 when, at a depth of 3,008 meters, the vessel was found, and that's 9,868.8 feet. The discovery was made via a combination of helicopters, underwater robots, and other state-of-the-art technology, which allowed it to be remotely filmed and explored. Although the wreck was crushed by ice and sunk over 100 years ago, the ship's name was still clearly legible along the stern of the vessel. And this is an incredible scientific feat as it highlights the extreme advances in technology, allowing us to explore some of the most inhospitable and extreme depths of our oceans. And next up we have a freaky looking, lanky underwater insect known as the giant sea spider. While they aren't actually spiders, they are in fact part of the insect family, and they are the largest sea spider found anywhere in the world, with some showing off a leg span of up to 10 inches. Ooh. These animals belong to a rare group that have no need for a respiratory system, breathing instead through their digestive system. The animal typically feeds off anemones, seaworms, jellyfish, sponges, and soft corals, making it technically carnivorous, and it feeds using a small tube which it inserts into its soft-bodied prey, allowing it to literally suck their guts out. Gross. As for the spider's guts, those are stored in the long, spindly legs of the creature, commonly found in shallow waters surrounding Antarctica. However, they have also been spotted at depths of 7,000 meters, 23,000 feet, making them highly adaptable to changes in both pressure and environment. Next up we have another relative giant, the giant Antarctic scale worm, which measures in at 20 centimeters, 7.8 inches long, and 10 centimeters, 4 inches wide. Now, that might not seem gigantic to you, but remember, it's a worm, so yeah, it's pretty big. And it's also super uncomfortable to look at. Well, from head on, but the underbelly is actually quite cool, looking as though the creature is lined with shiny gold feathers along its edges, which are actually appendages that help it move along rock formations and the sea floor. Its back is covered in scales that act as fully functioning body armor to protect against predators. Back to the head, which is, to put it nicely, unpleasant, and it's not even a head, really, it's just a fully retractable throat. While there is still so much we don't know about this recently discovered creature, the 2 sharp fangs on both its top and bottom jaw suggest it has a carnivorous diet and hunting rather than scavenging behavior. The animal is known to enjoy depths of up to 1,640 feet, and they're also super good for the underwater ecosystem, assisting in the building of reefs by recycling ocean waste through a process called worm composting, where they turn food scraps into other organic material that acts like soil for the sea floor. Next up, in our top 2 today, we have Mount Erebus, the world's southernmost fully active volcano that last erupted in 2020 and contains a very elusive lava lake. The lava lake sits within the volcano, and it's basically a pool of molten lava that never hardens, but instead remains in a constant viscous fluid state. While you might have assumed this kind of thing to exist at the bottom of every active volcano around the world, you'd be incorrect, as they are actually incredibly rare because they require an incredibly incredibly specific set of conditions to be able to form. You see, a volcano's lava is generally held way underground in something called a magma chamber that connects to a volcano through an underground channel in the Earth's crust. And ever so often, under the right conditions, the magma chamber sends lava shooting up through the channel and the crater of the volcano into the atmosphere. A lava lake is different. It exists above ground within the crater of a volcano, and the bottom of the lake is connected to the magma chamber by a much shorter passageway called a conduit, which is basically like a long pipe. The lava from the chamber rises into the lake, and when the lava begins to cool, it moves back down towards the chamber to heat and rise once more. Thus the lake remains unfrozen and in constant flow. Also a pretty cool sight to see. And finally, last on the list, we have ancient skulls, or at least that's what they kind of look like. These elongated skulls were allegedly found in 2016 by a team of archaeologists working in Antarctica. The discovery was shocking, and the bones dated all the way back to 1820, and it was originally believed that humans had not set foot in Antarctica until hundreds of years later. Of course, the timeline, along with the appearance of the bones, has led many to speculate that these bones are not belonging to the first humans in Antarctica, but rather the first extraterrestrials on Earth. While scientists are still baffled by the age of the bones, the shape of them didn't come as too much of a surprise to professionals, as the elongated skulls have been discovered in other places around the world and have been attributed to ritualistic physical cultural practices done by certain ancient societies. It has been said, however, that these particular skulls appear to not only be elongated, but much bigger than any to have ever been found before. So, who knows, maybe aliens aren't such a bad guess after all.
Starting us off at number 10 is the Ningen. Arguably the most famous folklore creature associated with Antarctica, the Ningen is said to be a terrifying deep-sea cryptid that has been terrorizing sailors for centuries. First recorded in the early 1700s by Japanese sailors who were exploring the Southern Ocean, the Ningen is often described as an enormous white creature with an elongated head and body that resembles that of a whale. But the creepiest part is that many tales describe it as having 2 human legs. I mean, just look at that thing. Creepy. Now, the Ningen has recently had a sort of resurgence after an alleged government employee spotted the creature on a research vessel. Originally posted to 2chan, many others came forward with photos or video. They claim to be the exact same creature, but officially, no confirmation of its existence has ever been set in stone. Some think it could be an alien, others are firm that it's a sea monster, but either way, it is one of the most feared cryptids in all of the Antarctic. Moving on to number 9, Antarctic Godzilla. Deep in the freezing temperatures of the Antarctic Sea, it's said there lies a creature so frightening that even one look into their eyes could be your last. Allegedly first spotted by a Japanese research trip in 1958, the Antarctic Godzilla is described as a monster with a head length of 30 inches who looks like a cow from the front but a monkey from the top. Said to be covered in brown dark hair with large eyes and pointed ears, the worst and scariest part of this creature is the serrated fin on its back that it can use to slice you in two at the slightest sign of aggression, which frankly sounds terrifying. But it only gets worse. So as this creature is named Antarctic Godzilla, it's, supposed to be super huge and terrifying, but it's believed that it can survive in not just water, but land too. So pretty much, you are never safe. So really it's just one more reason that visiting the Antarctic isn't really for me. Moving on to number 8, an alien base. We have reached that time in our list where we get to talk about everyone's favorite mysterious being, the aliens, of course. Now when it comes to aliens, there are lots of opinions about how real or not real they are, but if this next story is to be believed, there is allegedly a secret alien base with advanced and unconventional weapons hidden in the icy waters of the Antarctic. So according to a video uploaded by UFO hunters, a mysterious anomaly about 180 kilometers off the coast of Antarctica has been spotted, and they think not only is it some kind of hangar for a spaceship, but that actual aliens are likely residing there too. Now this may be more on the conspiracy side of things rather than urban legend, but whatever, it's all fun. Believers claim that an expedition should be organized so we can confirm the existence of the aliens, but others think that if we aren't careful, we may just kick off an intergalactic war. So whatever it is, let's just hope we tread carefully. Moving on to number 7, Deception Island sea monster. In 1906, a Norwegian-Chilean whaling company started using Whalers Bay as a base for their factory ship. Other operations followed closely behind them, and then the next thing you know, it was a boomtown. But then, by just 1931, after a sweeping decline in the market for whale oil due to the Great Depression, the island was abandoned. Since then, it has quite literally been a ghost town, with visitors reporting seeing strange orbs of light coming from the abandoned huts, seeing apparitions of people walking around, and even hearing disembodied voices. But it's not just ghosts and ghouls that are said to creep around the island, but a mysterious, inexplicable monster as well. This satellite image found on Google Earth has spawned numerous theories about what could be hiding in the area, but so far no one has ever come across it to be able to find out more. Next up at number 6, the Drake Passage. So obviously the Drake Passage itself is not an urban legend, there's no question about that, but there are many urban legends that go along with it. As many people likely already know, the Drake Passage is considered to be one of the most powerful convergence of seas. Located where the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean converge with the southern seas, it is notorious for its treacherous waters, and even more notorious for the alleged souls who lost their lives while trying to cross it. It's said over the years that more than 1,000 people have died attempting to pass through its terrifying and turbulent waves, and many believe that all who have lost their lives to the passage remain haunting the waters to warn those that attempt the feat to turn back. However, the most terrifying legends say they are not there to warn you. They are trying to bring you into their realm with them. So, cross the Drake Passage if you dare. Moving on to number 5, fallen angels. According to the Book of Enoch, which is an ancient Hebrew apocalyptic religious text, thousands of years ago, 200 fallen angels came down to earth and found solace on Mount Hermon. Upon their arrival, the fallen angels began to intertwine themselves with the inhabitants of the area, stealing away their daughters for themselves, and soon a war broke out with a hybrid race of giants called the Nephilim that ultimately punished the angels for eternity. After losing the war, it's said the fallen angels were sent to be imprisoned in a mountain in Antarctica, where they will remain frozen for eternity. But of course, there could be a way out of eternity, and some believe if we aren't careful, one wrong move could unleash them from their icy prison and send the world into a celestial war. Coming in at number 4, a fascist base. In the late 1930s, just before World War II broke out, fascist Germany set out on an expedition to explore Antarctica and eventually came across a section of land that they declared was theirs, New Swabia. Now, this defunct area has long been the subject of legends and conspiracies through the years, but none more terrifying than the legend of the base. As the story goes, in the wake of the expedition, the party built a huge top secret military base there, and after the war, high-ranking leaders, scientists, and elite military units who were trying to evade their crimes are claimed to have escaped to this base and survived. But that's not all. Some stories say that this base is not just a top secret hideout for the world's most notorious and evil man, but since the party was often associated with occult practices, some say that the base also leads to aliens, demons, and even an entrance to inner Earth. Moving on to number 3, Scott's Hut. During the early 1900s, there was a huge race to be the first country to reach the South Pole. Then in 1911, explorer Robert Falcon Scott and his team set out on a mission against Norway, later called the Terra Nova Expedition, to do just that. A hut was pre-constructed in Britain that was brought over as a base camp for the crew, and they set it up near the Great Ice Barrier. Eventually, it was decided some men would stay behind with supplies and shelter shelter and the rest of the team would venture out further. But sadly, their mission was ultimately a bust, as by the time they reached the pole, the Norwegian flag had already been planted. So the men turned around to head back. But sadly, due to frostbite, starvation, and disease, the men died off one by one and never made their return. Ever since, legend has it that the hut is where the ghosts of the perished men live, and visitors claim that you can hear strange voices and footsteps all around the cabin. Apparently, the minute you walk in, you feel as though you're being watched, and some even swear they have seen the ghosts of Scott and his men lurk inside. Moving on to number 2, Mount Erebus. Mount Erebus is the southernmost volcano on Earth, and it is still very much active. Some like to refer to it as the place where fire meets ice, as while inside the mountain it is still swirling with hot molten magma, the outside remains frozen solid and surrounded by ice caves. And while that might sound super cool, it is also the site of the infamous Ross Island plane crash, and that is where our urban legend begins. One fateful day in 1979, a tourist plane from New Zealand was flying over Antarctica. Though exactly what happened is unknown, somehow the computer directing the flight got rerouted, and instead of taking the usual route, ended up flying dangerously close to the mountain, and in the blink of an eye, the plane crashed, instantly killing all 257 passengers and crew members on board. Said to be overwhelmed with ghosts seeking revenge for having their lives taken too soon, many of the spirits are said to roam the island, wandering around the frigid landscape, waiting for unsuspecting visitors to walk past. And some say that if you walk past the mountain, you can still hear the screams of the victims who lost their lives to the crash. And last up in our number 1 spot today, the ghost ship of Jenny. As the legend goes, while crossing over the Drake Passage in 1823, the British vessel Jenny got stuck in the ice and was never seen again. For years, no one knew where it really was, what had happened to the boat, or if the crew had survived the treacherous crash. However, about 20 years later, it's said a whaling ship discovered them and, believing it to be the legendary Jenny, decided to go on board and check out what might still be on it. Legend says the crew made their way onto the ship, but were horrified to find all the bodies frozen solid and perfectly preserved by the ice. However, the most disturbing part was the note they found in the hand of a corpse they believed to be the captain. The note read, May 4th, 1823. No food for 71 days. I am the only one left alive. It said the crew were so frightened of the sight that they left all the bodies alone and took only the logbook when they left. However, no one has ever seen the logbook or Jenny again, nor has anyone ever seen the men who allegedly discovered Jenny all those years ago.
And we're kicking off this list with pyramids. So a couple years back, satellite images revealed a mysterious triangular formation in Antarctica's desolate landscape. When the images hit social media, debates and speculations about the origin of this quote-unquote pyramid began. The pyramid shape appeared in satellite images of the Ellsworth mountain range located in the southern reaches of Antarctica. It seemed to have a striking resemblance to the dimensions of Egypt's iconic Great Pyramid of Giza, measuring 2 kilometers in each direction from its square base. And as these images circulated on social media platforms, the conspiracy theories began to flow. Now, scientists attribute these formations to natural processes and optical illusions, but perhaps there's a deeper secret being hidden from us in the cold, inhospitable terrain of Antarctica. Was there some ancient civilization that used to call the South Pole home? Did a group of beings from somewhere beyond our planet construct it? I don't know, I'm just here to ask the important questions. And now I'm here to tell you that if you are liking our channel so far, if you're new here, why not hit that subscribe button? We have awesome videos coming at you on the daily, plenty to see. Don't miss out. Do that right now. Next up, we have the ANITA discovery. The Antarctic Impulsive Transient Antenna, or ANITA, is a sophisticated scientific tool in the form of a high-tech balloon operated by NASA, floating above Antarctica. Its mission is to track subatomic particles generated by the interactions of high-energy neutrinos entering Earth's atmosphere from the depths of space. But a few years ago, Anita made a strange discovery. It detected neutrinos seemingly originating from beneath the Earth's surface, quite the departure from its intended function of capturing spaceborne neutrinos. One of the more fun hypotheses behind this is that these detected particles may be signs of a possible parallel universe where the fundamental laws of our own universe might operate in complete reverse. Now, this is really just speculative, but it's a pretty fascinating idea. Scientists were pretty perplexed by these findings, and as of right now, there still isn't a definitive explanation. At number 8, we have the Ross Island haunting. Ross Island is not only home to the McMurdo Station, a hub for scientific research, it also harbors something much darker. It's rumored to be haunted. There was a tragic plane crash on the island in 1979, and this crash claimed the lives of 257 people. Over the years, visitors to Ross Island have reported unsettling occurrences describing ghostly footsteps echoing in the icy darkness and mysterious voices that seem to emanate from nowhere. Some claim to have come face to face with full-on apparitions, believing to be the restless spirits of the plane crash victims, wandering the frigid snow-covered landscape for eternity. The haunting stories surrounding Ross Island have continued to be passed down through generations of Antarctic explorers and researchers. Number 7, the UFO crash landing. In 2018, an ex-Navy SEAL who had worked in the South Pole revealed some intriguing information to an investigative journalist named Linda Moulton Howe about an alien structure he once visited. He wished to remain anonymous as this information was highly classified. In August of 2003, this individual and his team had been tasked with a highly classified objective under the guise of a research reconnaissance mission. They arrived at their destination where they found a large dark structure protruding from the ice. There were doors on it, these big square slabs cut into the structure that when you push on kind of receded into the building, opening up into this long hallway. The inside of the structure was lit green by an unknown source, and adorning the walls were strange hieroglyphics. But they didn't resemble any hieroglyphics seen here on Earth. This is a pretty outlandish story. Impossible to prove, but hard to discredit completely because it's just hearsay, really, but it is fascinating. Plus, Antarctica is one of the most unpopulated places on Earth. It would be a good spot for little green men from space to operate without the presence of prying eyes. So let's stay on the topic of UFOs for a minute and discuss another possible UFO crash landing in Antarctica, this time spotted with satellite images. YouTube channel Secure Team 10 shared a video back in 2018 zooming close in on a small island just off the coast of Antarctica, which seemed to show a long, sharp mark in the snow as if something had crashed and then skidded along. Now, this island has the exact same environment as Antarctica. It seems to be a piece of it that broke off and floated away. So it's inhospitable, totally void of people. So what is this object? The narrator describes it as cigar-shaped, covered by mounds of snow. Whatever the object is, it's also very large, and the trail it left behind is almost 1,000 meters long. The trail behind this mysterious object leads to a mountain, and there's debris that seems to have been pushed out at the base. It looks like as if the object flew down and crashed into the mountain before skidding along the ice where it now sits. Part of me thinks there could have been an avalanche or something on the mountain, and maybe this is just a piece of rock that slid out extra far. I don't know. What do you all think, though? Number 4, the giant hole. In 2017, researchers in Antarctica observed a massive Polynia, a large area of open water within the sea ice, suddenly appearing. It was already massive, but things got even crazier when the Polynia expanded at an unprecedented rate, increasing in size by more than 8 times within just a few weeks. The discovery was made in Weddell Sea, an area known for its harsh freezing conditions. Polynias are not uncommon in Antarctica, but their sudden and substantial growth is a more rare occurrence that puzzled the researchers. These gaps in the ice are usually maintained by complex processes, ocean currents, temperature variations, but the rapid expansion of this particular one challenged existing scientific understanding. Researchers and climate experts were left with a series of questions. What was causing this rapid expansion? Was it related to climate change, natural variability, or some other unknown factor? And the scientific community set out to study this event with the use of satellite imagery, ocean sensors, and computer models. But the prevailing theory is that the Polynia was caused by intense cyclones. Alright, next let's talk about all the military presence in Antarctica. What's going on there? Let's start by going all the way back to World War II. There have been rumors for decades that Mr. H himself, the dictator of Germany, might have established a covert base in Antarctica. As for what they were doing there are lots of rumors, but the SS were super into mysticism and the occult, always in pursuit of ancient artifacts that they believed had powers that could aid in their conquest. Pretty wild, but maybe they were after something hidden somewhere in the frozen tundra. After the war in 1946 and 47, the US sent a huge fleet to Antarctica, and many believe that they had been tasked with destroying this secret German base. As for more contemporary military activities, who knows what's going on? Just imagine vast hidden research facilities buried beneath the ice, or cutting-edge technology being tested in the harshest conditions imaginable. Conspiracies suggest everything from advanced weaponry to secretive scientific experiments related to climate change or extraterrestrial phenomena. Who knows? And number 2 is Deception Island. Deception Island, nestled in the icy expanse of Antarctica, holds a chilling history that goes beyond its freezing temperatures. Once a bustling whalers station, remnants of this grim past still linger in the form of whale bones strewn across some of its beaches, a reminder of an industry that relentlessly hunted these beautiful creatures. When the Great Depression hit and oil prices plummeted, the whalers station was abandoned, only to be repurposed later as a British World War II base. Now today, visitors to Whalers Bay, a landing site on this island, have shared tales of their experiences. Some have reported witnessing eerie apparitions, strange orbs of light. Some have even claimed to hear disembodied voices echoing across the ice. In 2009, when the crew of the American TV show Destination Truth ventured to the bay, they captured unexplained bangs and the unsettling sight of a shadowy figure roaming among the decaying ruins. The crew even captured a thermal signature in a window and an SOS signal emanating from one of the abandoned shacks. But finally, we have the theory that Atlantis could have been located deep beneath the ice of Antarctica. According to Plato, Atlantis was this advanced civilization that mysteriously vanished overnight. Now, when we think of Atlantis, we usually picture it in the sunny Mediterranean, not, buried under all that ice down south. But here's the twist. Antarctica wasn't always an icy wasteland. Millions of years ago, it had forests and a much milder climate. So some folks propose that Atlantis could have existed in Antarctica before it froze over, or some other ancient civilization. They point to satellite images showing peculiar shapes under the ice, speculating that these could be remnants of the lost city. We already talked about a pyramid earlier. That could have something to do with it. Scientists, though, of course, remain skeptical. They've been studying Antarctica for years, haven't found any concrete evidence to support this idea, but it's fun to think about. Could that pyramid shape, again, possibly play into this? Who knows?
In 2017, Antarctica saw a dramatic event when a massive hole, roughly the size of Ireland, appeared in its ice. Known as a Polynia, this hole, which stretches across 78,000 square kilometers, is the largest of its kind observed since the 1970s and the first to form in 40 years. Located in the Weddell Sea of the Southern Ocean, this giant opening was created by warmer, saltier water from deeper ocean layers, rising up and melting the ice above. As this warm water encounters the colder surface water, it cools and sinks only to be reheated and pushed back to the surface in a continuous cycle. While scientists are still puzzling over the exact reasons behind the formation of these giant holes, some suggest they might be used by marine mammals for breathing. Researchers are actively studying these intriguing holes to better understand their formation and impact on the Antarctic environment. In Antarctica's fossil-rich regions, scientists have uncovered remarkably well-preserved remains of ancient forests that date back around 120 million years. These forests thrived when Antarctica was part of the supercontinent Gondwana, a far cry from the icy desert it is today. Some imaginative theories suggest these fossilized forests might be remnants of an ancient lost civilization. While these ideas definitely capture the imagination, the current scientific consensus is that these fossils are valuable clues about Antarctica's warmer, greener past when it was home to lush vegetation and diverse ecosystems. Beneath the thick ice sheets of Antarctica lies a hidden marvel, the Gamburtsev Mountains. Stretching over 1,200 kilometers and rising up to 3,000 meters, about a third of the height of Mount Everest, these mountains remain largely concealed under a 2,000 to 4,000 kilometer thick ice layer. Discovered in 1958 by Russian scientists who noticed unusual gravity fluctuations while traveling across Antarctica, these mountains are named after Soviet geophysicist Grigory A. Gamburtsev. Despite never having directly observed these mountains, scientists use radar, gravity, and magnetic readings to study them and uncover their secrets. The Gamburtsevs have long puzzled researchers due to their age, estimated at around 1 billion years, as they should have eroded away over such a long period of time. One prevailing theory suggests that a frozen mantle may be shielding these ancient peaks from the relentless forces of erosion, preserving their grandeur beneath the ice. Antarctica is of course known for its harsh and freezing conditions, and because of this, it is home to some remarkable microorganisms, including a unique species of fungi that thrives in this icy environment. Unlike the fungi you might find in warm, forested areas, these Antarctic fungi have adapted to survive the extreme cold by feeding on the old wooden huts left behind by early explorers. Another intriguing type of fungi in Antarctica has been discovered living off of the petroleum leaks from abandoned fuel containers. This type of fungi is particularly interesting because scientists are exploring its potential for cleaning up larger oil spills around the world. By studying these resilient fungi, researchers hope to harness their capabilities for environmental cleanup and gain insights into how life can adapt to the most extreme conditions on Earth. You might have heard whispers online about mysterious pyramids hidden beneath Antarctica's icy surface. Some theories suggest that these could be ancient structures built by aliens, lost civilizations, or even long-lost explorers. However, before you start picturing an Antarctic version of Egypt's Great Pyramid of Giza, let's set the record straight. There is no evidence supporting the existence of man-made pyramids in Antarctica. What some interpret as pyramids are actually natural mountain formations. In 2016, satellite images highlighted a particularly striking peak in the Ellsworth Mountains, which sparked headlines and speculation, but experts confirm that these so-called pyramids are simply just impressive examples of glacial horns, shaped by natural geological processes over a millennia. While the name pyramid does appear in several official Antarctic mountain names, these are just descriptive of their shapes and not evidence of hidden ancient architecture. In early 2017, a satellite image of Antarctica sparked a flurry of excitement and speculation online when it appeared to show what some claimed was a giant staircase. Posted on a conspiracy theory forum where all the craziest information is, the image led to wild theories suggesting it could be an alien landing site. While some jumped to extraterrestrial conclusions, others proposed more plausible explanations, such as a glitch in the camera or snow formations. Despite the buzz, skeptics pointed out that the image lacked specific coordinates and could be a natural anomaly like snow dunes or ridges. Researchers and experts generally attribute such formations to natural processes rather than mysterious or alien origins, but the image certainly added another intriguing layer to the many conspiracy theories surrounding Antarctica. For this one, instead of just taking a look at this strange structure, we are climbing it. Well, not we, but someone did. In January 2013, a team of climbers and filmmakers, including Leo Holding, Sean Leary, Jason Pickles, Chris Rabone, and Alistair Lee, tackled a new route up the northeast ridge of Ulvitana in Antarctica's Fenrisk-Jeften Range. This 35-pitch route, stretching 1,750 meters, was the fourth ascent of Ulvitana, the highest peak in the range, known for its striking spire-like shape. Arriving on December 22nd, the team set up a festive base camp before spending 10 challenging days scaling the ridge through difficult 5.12 A2 terrain. Despite extreme cold, with temperatures dropping to -35 degrees Celsius and even a severe snowstorm, they reached the summit on January 24th. Although they had initially planned to base jump from the peak, dangerous weather conditions led them to descend via traditional methods. The team's adventure, marked by intense climbing and harsh conditions, was captured in a film and celebrated as a major achievement in Antarctic climbing. The Hollow Earth theory is like something straight out of a sci-fi adventure, suggesting that beneath Antarctica's icy crust lies a gateway to a colossal, hollow world. Imagine a hidden realm, complete with its own advanced civilization, ecosystems, and maybe even mystical creatures, all tucked away in Earth's hollow core. Although this theory captures the imagination and has inspired countless stories in speculative fiction, it doesn't necessarily hold up under scientific scrutiny. Geologists and researchers firmly argue that our planet is solid with a layered structure, not a giant empty sphere. But I've never been, so maybe one day. I don't know. I'm not going to the center of the earth. I'm not Josh Hutcherson. Despite its freezing temperatures, Antarctica is home to several volcanoes, including 4 on Ross Island. While most of these volcanoes are dormant, Mount Erebus stands out as the world's southernmost active volcano and Antarctica's second highest peak, reaching 3,800 meters. Over the past 30 years, Mount Erebus has shown increased volcanic activity, featuring a remarkable landscape of liquid magma and ancient lava lakes that have been boiling for about 1.3 million years. Due to its remote location and harsh weather, access to Mount Erebus is definitely limited, but a team of scientists managed to climb it in 2013. They braved snow, rocks, and glaciers to reach the summit, where they discovered life thriving in the volcano's heat, including microorganisms living in ice caves and soil. These extreme conditions make these organisms some of the most unique and resilient in the entire world. Beneath Antarctica's thick ice sheet lies Lake Vostok, an enormous subglacial lake that remains hidden from view and has intrigued scientists for years. This vast lake, which is roughly the size of Lake Ontario, sits under miles of ice and is home to unique microbial life that thrives in extreme conditions. Because Lake Vostok has been isolated from the rest of the world for millions of years, its environment has led to some fascinating theories. Scientists speculate that the lake could harbor hidden ecosystems or even unknown forms of life adapted to its extreme conditions. The discovery of these extremophiles, microorganisms that survive in such harsh environments, fuels excitement and curiosity, hinting at the possibility of life forms that could exist in other extreme extreme environments, possibly even ones beyond our own planet.
And we're starting off the list at number 10 with the Jenny. The Jenny was an English ship that left port on the Isle of Wight in 1822. Now, there isn't a whole lot of detail as to what happened to the ship, as the story has been around for years but has never been 100% verified. At some point during the journey though, the ship became trapped in ice somewhere in the Drake Passage, about a year after they set sail. The ship wasn't discovered though until 1840 by a Captain Brighton on a whaling ship called Hope. On the frozen Jenny were supposedly the bodies of the crew members, eerily well preserved because of the cold, frozen climate. And the captain's last log entry had been made on January 17th of 1823. Some stories go that Brighton's crew was then haunted by the ghosts of the Jenny, even seeing a ghostly image of the ship appear at night floating through the ocean. And at number 9 we have the Ningen. Cryptid time! Love my monsters. The Ningen is a cryptid that originates from Japanese folklore and modern urban legends. The term Ningen translates to human being in Japanese, but when used in the context of the cryptid, it refers to a mysterious and humanoid sea creature reported to inhabit the icy waters of the Antarctic. There are a couple different physical descriptions of the creature, but common features include a humanoid shape with a head, a torso, and like these long legs. Sometimes there's flippers involved. It's often large in size, around 20 to 30 meters in length. The Ningen is said to have smooth, pale, and rubbery skin, kind of like a beluga whale. Some accounts mention facial features, eyes, a mouth, while others describe it being completely faceless. The Ningen started circulating online in the mid-2000s when reports and alleged eyewitness accounts started being reported on the Japanese online forum website 2channel. These reports often claimed sightings by crew members of Japanese whaling vessels and fishermen in the Antarctic region. At number 8, we have the secret German base. So there's been this legend floating around for decades that the German forces set up this secretive military base in the frozen hell that is Antarctica, concealing themselves away from the prying eyes of the public in order to carry out advanced technological experiments and tests, or search for mystical artifacts that could aid them in their evil conquest. The idea that the SS were secretly experimenting with advanced technologies and high-tech weapons, or trying to find ancient, powerful artifacts buried deep beneath the icy wilderness of Antarctica is pretty insane, but so was the SS. The idea isn't even that they actually accomplished anything, just that there's a possibility that they tried. There are also some conspiracy theorists who believe that they discovered ancient alien technology buried in the ice, leading to secret research projects that may have even continued after the end of the war. Others believe that Antarctica could have been a refuge for Mr. H, a place where his dream of creating a superhuman Aryan race could continue in isolation. Continuing along with the whole World War II secret base legend, let's talk about the possible destruction of this said German base. After the war in 1946 and 47, the US sent this huge fleet to Antarctica, and what were they doing? Never been 100% verified, kept mostly secret from the public. So there are those that believe that they'd been tasked with destroying this secret German base. Now, this would have been a pretty easy mission, right? The war was won, base was totally free of any soldiers, just fly on over there and blow it up. Could have definitely been the case, but if we're talking about the fact that maybe there were Germans still there long after the war, then this, would have been a much tougher mission. So, I don't know. Maybe nothing happened. Probably nothing happened. I probably sound incredibly insane right now, but it's fun to imagine these things, right? Number 6, Lake Vostok. Lake Vostok, hiding beneath Antarctica's icy surface, is a massive subglacial lake that's captured the imagination of scientists and conspiracy theorists for years. It's been locked away for millions of years. It's one of the largest lakes of its kind on Earth. And what's so intriguing about it is, of course, the isolation. What kind of life could be down there? Some scientists speculate about the possibility of discovering new species of fish and other unknown life forms. There have also been strange radar readings that could point to anomalies beneath the ice. The wilder conspiracy theories, of course, involve an ancient civilization of some kind lost under the ice, but no one's drilled all the way through the ice to take a peek. So some say it's because of the risk of maybe contaminating whatever could be down there, seeing as it's been locked away for so long, but others think maybe there's just something they're not telling us, government cover-up type stuff. But what do you think? As always, share your thoughts down in the comments. Next on the list, we have the haunting of Deception Island. Deception Island kind of looks like a frozen hellscape. It used to be the site of several whaling stations that have long since been abandoned. The whaling operations were established in the early 20th century, and a Norwegian-Chilean whaling station named Hector was operational on the island until the Great Depression forced it to close. During World War II, the British established a military presence on Deception Island named Operation Tabarin. The island was a monitoring and control point to counter potential German activity in Antarctica, and after the war, the station was turned over to civilian use for scientific research. Some visitors and researchers have reported strange occurrences and ghostly sightings on the island. One of the most well-known stories is about the British research station called Base B, which operated on the island in the late 1940s. According to the legend, the research station was abandoned abruptly because of unexplained and mysterious incidents. Some versions of the story claim that the researchers started seeing paranormal stuff going on, leading them to flee the station in horror. Number 4, Antarctic Godzilla. That's an intriguing title, isn't it? So it's February 13th, 1958. It's not actually, just imagine, a chilly evening in the Antarctic. The Japanese research vessel Soya Nihongo is cruising along the Lutzow Home Bay, minding its own business. It's 7 p.m. That crew's probably sipping some hot cocoa or whatever they do on research vessels when they're not actually researching. Then, out of nowhere, this colossal sea mammal, or some like to call it the Antarctic Godzilla, decides to make a grand appearance. Fast forward to 1974. Off the Latelton Peninsula, another Japanese fishing vessel, probably thinking they were in for a routine day of catching fish, spots a creature that some boats think might be the same beastie encountered back in 58. They call it Cabagon. The creatures were both said to have large eyes and heads with grayish skin. Number 3, Organism 46b. So remember Lake Vostok? Well, this ties into that. Organism 46b is an urban legend centered around a mysterious aquatic creature, allegedly discovered by Russian scientists while drilling in Voltok Lake. The creature is said to be a gelatinous organism, almost like a giant squid, with incredibly deadly venom and the ability to rapidly shapeshift and mimic other marine life. According to the legend, Organism 46b has a unique method of hunting. It can extend a set of thin, flexible filaments from its body to paralyze and then consume its prey. The legend claims that the Russian scientists experimented with Organism 46b, attempting to understand its abilities and potentially weaponize them. These experiments went haywire, resulting in the deaths of several researchers. Then the Russian government covered up the incident. All sounds totally 100% true to me. And at second place, we have aliens and UFOs. So there are all kinds of myths and stories, and just people full on believing that Antarctica is teeming with alien life, hidden alien bases buried beneath the ice, crashed UFOs, government experiments involving aliens, the list goes on and on. In 2018, an ex-Navy SEAL disclosed information to an investigative journalist about a mysterious structure he and his team encountered during a classified mission in August of 2003. According to him, the team discovered a large dark structure protruding from the ice. The structure had doors, which when pushed, revealed a long hallway illuminated by green light, which didn't seem to come from any particular source. The walls inside were adorned with symbols and hieroglyphics that didn't resemble any seen on Earth. The remoteness of Antarctica with its extreme climate does make for the perfect setting for clandestine alien activities. And we're finishing off the list with another ghost story. The ghosts of Sir Robert Scott's tragic expedition. The expedition, officially known as the Terra Nova, expedition aimed to be the first to reach the South Pole. They would unfortunately never return. In 1911, Scott and his team of 25 men departed from Cape Evans, leaving behind the hut that would later become this iconic symbol of their ill-fated journey. The Cape Evans hut was the main hub before the group set off in the main stretch of their journey. The hut, preserved by the extreme cold temperatures of the Antarctic, has become a time capsule of the era. Scientific equipment, personal belongings, even frozen specimens like penguins the group had been studying remain in the same positions that they were right before they left. But despite its frozen state, the hut is not said to be totally devoid of activity. And I'm not talking about staff and stuff like that. Visitors and staff who have entered Scott's hut often report experiencing an eerie and unsettling feeling. Now that's to be expected, but the environment seems to carry this emotional weight, a sense of sadness and emptiness. But it's not just feelings they have. Odd things are said to happen there. Ghostly whispers, sightings of shadowy figures, and objects being found in places where they weren't left before. And we're starting things off with the Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition. So this is actually a case where the crew managed to make it back home, but it was a struggle. The Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition, led by Sir Ernest Shackleton, aimed to cross Antarctica from the Weddell Sea to the Ross Sea. In August of 1914, the expedition set sail from England aboard the Endurance, a ship built to withstand the icy Antarctic waters, but in January of 1915, the ship became trapped in the pack ice of the Weddell Sea, and for months the crew waited, hoping for the ice to finally release its grip, but the Endurance eventually sank. And now the crew was stranded on drifting ice floes where they had to just camp. And when the ice finally broke in April of 1916, the crew sailed in lifeboats to reach Elephant Island. But they realized rescue was going to be unlikely there. So Shackleton and a small crew embarked on an 800-mile open boat journey to South Georgia Island, where there was a whaling station. After a grueling 16-day journey across the Southern Ocean, they reached South Georgia Island. Shackleton and a few men then trekked across the island's rugged terrain to reach the whaling station, and after several attempts, Shackleton successfully rescued the remaining crew on Elephant Island in August of that year. The Ken Boruc Air Antarctica crash. Bob Heath was an experienced Canadian pilot. He worked in the Northwest Territories, piloting scientists to ice floes to study polar bears, and during the fall he would pilot a twin otter all the way to Antarctica. This would be a 4-day-long trip. There he'd spend the entire winter piloting scientists to various research stations. When spring hit, he'd travel back home, making pit stops on his way to visit family in Winnipeg and Toronto. In 2013, Heath took off on another flight to Antarctica along with 2 other crew, and they were set to arrive at Terra Nova Bay Research Station, but they never showed up. 2 days went by with no sign of the crew until a search and rescue crew spotted the tail of the plane jutting out from a snow-covered mountain in the Queen Alexandra mountain range. The crash was determined to be unsurvivable. What makes the case even more distressing is that the bodies were never recovered, as attempting to do so would be incredibly dangerous. They had just crashed in too precarious a spot. Number 8. Flight 571. On October 13th, 1972, Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571, carrying 45 passengers and crew, including members of the Uruguayan rugby team and their friends and family, crashed into the Andes Mountains in Argentina. 27 of the 45-person crew had actually survived the initial crash, but they had limited food supplies, little warm clothing, and no way of communicating with the outside world. In order to survive, they resorted to pretty drastic measures. In the days following the crash, the passengers relied on first whatever meager rations they had, but as these supplies just continued to dwindle and hope of rescue began to fade, desperation set in. In order to stay alive, some of these survivors made the difficult decision to resort to They consumed the bodies of the deceased passengers who had died in the crash or succumbed to the harsh weather conditions, and after more than 2 months in the mountains, 2 of the passengers finally managed to make contact with 3 men on horseback, like days out from their initial crash landing site. And these guys ended up going for help. And finally, after 72 days in the wilderness, the remaining 14 survivors were rescued. In at number 7, we have the Swedish Antarctic Expedition. The Swedish Antarctic Expedition of 1901 to 1904, led by Otto Nordenskjöld, encountered a crisis when their ship, which was actually called the Antarctic, got stuck in the ice of the Weddell Sea in 1903. They were unable to free the ship, forcing the crew to abandon it. Stranded on the ice, they survived by hunting seals and penguins, melting ice for water, and constructing a basic shelter made out of stone. They waited for rescue for almost a year, and then in November of 1903, the crew managed to launch lifeboats and reached Paulet Island, finding supplies from a previous expedition. They had to camp out for yet another whole winter before finally being rescued in November of 1904 by the Argentine corvette Uruguay. A happy ending, but a failed expedition. 2 winters spent anywhere but indoors, especially in Antarctica. That is a disaster to me. The Comandante Ferraz Station fire on February 25th, 2012 at the Brazilian Antarctic Research Station in Antarctica. A deadly fire broke out. The fire resulted in the loss of 2 lives. The fire broke out in a machine room at the station, quickly spreading due to the intense winds and the flammable materials inside. 69 people present at the station were evacuated, but tragically 2 members of the Brazilian Navy lost their lives during the incident. The fire completely destroyed a significant portion of the research station, laboratories, living quarters, as well as valuable scientific equipment. It's believed that the fire broke out after an explosion caused by a short circuit. Next, we have the disappearance of Carl R. Disch. Carl Robert Disch was an ionospheric physicist working for the National Bureau of Standards. He disappeared near Byrd Station, Antarctica on May 8, 1965, and is presumed dead. Disch was stationed at the Radio Noise Building of Byrd Station, where he conducted ionospheric studies. On the morning of May 8th, he left the Radio Noise Building to return to the main station complex. When he failed to arrive at the main station within a reasonable time, though, a search was launched. They spotted his trail at first, but the search party had to return to the station to refuel, and by the time they returned, his trail had been covered by drifting snow and he was never found. They tried to increase the visibility of the station. They fired off flares. They used extra floodlights, but there was still no sign of him. And what made things even worse was the temperatures had dropped as low as -42. The search was eventually called off on May 14th and Disch was declared presumed dead. He was only 26 years old. Number 3, the Akademik Shokalski. The Akademik Shokalski, a Russian research vessel, became trapped in Antarctic ice on December 24th of 2013. Merry goddamn Christmas. The ship was carrying a team of scientists, journalists, and tourists who were on expedition to retrace the steps of Australian explorer Douglas Mawson. The situation was caused by a combination of rapidly changing weather conditions and large ice flows. And the ship's crew tried to navigate through the ice, but the surrounding ice pack just closed in around them, trapping the vessel. They tried to break through the ice, which didn't work, so they tried waiting for natural movements in the ice pack to create openings, but no luck there either. The passengers and crew were stuck for over a week until finally a Chinese icebreaker, the Zhulong, and Australian icebreaker, the Aurora Australis, were sent to assist. And after several days, the passengers and crew members were airlifted to safety by a helicopter from the Zhulong, while the remaining crew stayed aboard the ship to sail it back home once the conditions were more favorable. Eventually, a break in the ice did allow for the ship to maneuver and escape on January 7th, reaching open water and ending the entire ordeal. The tragic incident involving Jeremy Bailey, David Wild, John Wilson, and John Ross occurred in 1965 near the Heimfort Mountains in East Antarctica. So this group was traveling on a muskeg tractor and its sledges with a team of dogs running behind them. 3 of the men were in the cab of the muskeg and John Ross sat on the sledge at the back. close to the Huskies. Bailey was driving, Wild and Wilson were scanning the ice ahead. At around 8:30, the dogs alongside the sledge suddenly stopped running and the sledge came to an abrupt halt. Ross realized something was off and turned to find that the muskeg had disappeared from view. He ran up to the first sledge to see that it had wedged into the top of a large crevice that ran across their path. The muskeg had fallen about 30 meters or 100 feet into the crevice, with its tracks wedged against one ice wall and the cab flattened against the other. So Ross called out, but there was no response from the men inside the cab down there. After some time, Bailey's voice was actually heard, confirming that Wild had died, and both Bailey and Wilson were seriously injured. Ross tried descending into the crevice to help, but it was pretty treacherous. Bailey told Ross, don't come down here, don't risk it. But Ross started descending anyway. It was clear that Bailey was also severely injured, unable to move. Ross continued his attempts to reach them, but Bailey eventually stopped responding. The last sound Ross heard from the crevice was a scream from Bailey. Finally, we have the Terra Nova expedition. The Terra Nova expedition, led by Captain Robert Falcon Scott, was a British Antarctic expedition that took place between 1910 and 1913. The primary objective was to be the first to reach the South Pole. In January 1911, the expedition established its base, known as Cape Evans on Ross Island in Antarctica. Over the next 2 years, the team conducted scientific research and made some attempts to reach the South Pole, but on January 17th of 1912, after a long and brutal journey, a 5-man party led by Scott finally reached the South Pole, only to be met with a Norwegian flag planted in the ground. Yeah, a Norwegian expedition led by Roald Amundsen had beaten them to the punch just over a month earlier. There's a photo online of the group just after they'd reached their destination and made that disappointing discovery. It's pretty rough to look at. And now, completely disheartened, the team began their long journey back to Cape Evans, but they would never make it back. They faced increasingly harsh conditions on their return journey. By late March of 1912, they were caught in a fierce blizzard, unable to continue their journey, and the men were just stuck in their tents basically. They struggled with frostbite, complete exhaustion, and starvation. Scott and his 2 remaining companions, Edward Wilson and Henry Bowers, died in extreme cold and exhaustion in their tent, just 11 miles from a supply depot.
At number 10 is the Axis Powers Base. In the late 1930s, the fascist party from World War II stirred up quite a bit of intrigue with their Arctic escapades. But what was really going on? Well, it all started with a German expedition from December 1938 to April 1939 on the ship MS Schwabenland. Their mission was to claim a slice of Antarctica known today as Dronning Maud Land. That's gonna come up multiple times throughout this video, so remember that. On paper, their main motivation of this expedition was to protect the German whaling industry. Or so they claimed. The Schwabenland was packing some cool gear like a steam catapult and 2 Dornier wall flying boats. These babies were used to snap pics of a whopping 600,000 square kilometers of the frozen landscape. They dropped a bunch of aluminum flags from the plane and left some on foot expeditions, but none of these flags have ever been seen again. The Germans swooped in and officially claimed the surveyed land as New Schwabenland in August of 1939, but then World War II came along and spoiled their base building plans. Or so they claim. The German claim to this slice of Antarctica was dropped in 1945, and there's no hard evidence of them doing much else in Antarctica during World War II at this time. Or so they claimed. At number 9 is the British Operation Tabarin. Tabarin? I don't know. Antarctica might seem like the last place you would expect to see wartime secrets, but during World War II, Britain had some hidden plans on ice. While the Germans weren't chilling out there, allegedly, Britain was in fact making moves in Antarctica. They staked their claim in Antarctica to fend off Argentina and Chile's claims, both of whom were buddy-buddy with Germany. In 1944, Operation Tabarin kicked off, where the British occupied their slice of the Antarctic pie. They said it was about hunting down German ships, but it was more than that. They set up a secret base in frozen desolation, and these bases weren't bustling metropolises either. They were small manned outposts, but they weren't just sipping on hot cocoa out there. They gathered important intel and conducted scientific scientific research. After the war, the chill research vibe continued, evolving into the British Antarctic Survey. Now, with both the Allies and the Axis powers holding a stake in Antarctic land, it was only a matter of time before this Cold War got freezer burn. But before I get into this secret Antarctic battle, if you're enjoying this video so far, you could support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Most Amazing, and ringing that notification bell. At number 8 is Modenheim 1. It's often rumored that during Operation Tabarin, the Brits set up a base, Modenheim 1, in Dronning land during the World War II to keep an eye on the supposed Axis base. But conveniently, there are no public records to prove of Modenheim 1's existence. Now, the fascists allegedly attacked Modenheim 1 in July of 1945, followed by SAS-led retaliatory missions from October to December of the same year. But for as fantastic as this Antarctic covert ops story is, there's not a lot to back it up. You see, on paper, Operation Tabarin wasn't about secret wars. It aimed at a British scientific presence in the British claimed sector of Antarctica. Plus, there's no indication of SAS presence in Antarctica during the war. So the tales of the hidden battle and mystery bases are mostly just myths, my friends. Antarctica was more about scientific exploration than covert ops during those times. Or so they claim. At number 7 is Operation High Jump in 1946 to 47, which saw the USA sending the largest crew ever to Antarctica, over 4,700 men, 13 ships, and 33 aircraft. Now, the official purpose was, in fact, a military one, all about preparing for cold weather warfare. But there are rumors that suggest that there was something more covert at play. The conspiracy theorists claim that Operation High Jump's real mission was to destroy the aforementioned secret Axis powers in Dronning land. The truth is, High Jump was primarily a military exercise, not a cloak and dagger mission. It was well documented in the press, as the expedition was accompanied by journalists, and official reports were released. While it might have been classified as confidential, it was never really a secret. No flying saucers chased them away, it was just the unpredictability of harsh Antarctic conditions that ended their mission early. Or so they claim. At number 6, Operation Argus Nuclear Bombs. So there were a lot of talk about these supposed secret bases in Antarctica, but let's delve into some facts here. You see, back in 1958, the US conducted 3 nuclear explosions during Operation Argus over the South Atlantic, not directly over Antarctica. These were high-altitude tests aimed at potentially disrupting radar, radio, and electronics of satellites and missiles during the Cold War. Now, the whole idea that these bases were meant to destroy the fascist bases in Dronning land is just a narrative not supported by evidence. In fact, if these nukes had gone off near Antarctica, the radioactive fallout would have shown up in ice from across the region, but no such peaks of radioisotopes have ever been found in those ice cores. Or so they claim. Moreover, 1958 was the International Geophysical Year, with international corporations and scientists from various countries in the region, making it highly unlikely that such nuclear tests would have gone unnoticed. At number 4, the Interplanetary Corporate Conglomerate. According to whistleblower Corey Goode, I don't know, there's a buried ancient alien civilization beneath 2 miles of ice, and it's been hidden from us for decades. This isn't some sci-fi fantasy, it's based on Gode's first-hand experience as a whistleblower from a secret space program. Allegedly. The story goes back to the 1939 Arctic German expedition. The ancient beings he refers to, called the pre-Adamites, were giants with elongated skulls, and their technology and remnants have allegedly been removed from the site, but only a select few knows what else was discovered. The timing of this revelation is quite interesting, as it might serve as a distraction from explosive global events, including allegations of trafficking among the elite. I don't know how that ties in, but okay. At number 3 on the list is Admiral Byrd's Crystal City. The esteemed US naval officer and explorer Admiral Richard Byrd was one of the first pilots to fly over both poles, who actually organized Operation High Jump himself, which, as I said, was the largest expedition to ever travel to Antarctica, with all kinds of ships, aircraft, and crew, in order to scout out locations for potential military bases. But during his explorations, Admiral Byrd allegedly came upon something highly unexpected. The following comes from not a public account, but from his own diary, which was discovered by his son after Byrd's passing, in which he recounts an extraordinary story. Upon encountering a large cave in the South Pole, through which he could easily fly his plane, Byrd steers his plane into an opening and flew under the earth. And as he flew within the massive cave, he encroaches upon an incredibly temperate and lush environment, not something you would expect in the South Pole. But that's just the beginning. He tells of how he sees a shimmering rainbow city made of crystal, and suddenly he loses autonomy of his plane as flying disc-shaped objects lead his plane to the ground, whereupon he's escorted to a being which he refers to as the Master in his diary, who tells Burr that this alien species is massively disappointed with nuclear weapons and how they've recently destroyed Hiroshima and Nagasaki, seeming to be really concerned with what's going on at the surface, telling Burr that he hopes humanity will ultimately stop the use of atomic weapons.
Starting us off at number 10, we have Deception Island. In 1906, a Norwegian-Chilean whaling company started using Whalers Bay as a base for their factory ship. Other operations followed closely behind them, and then the next thing you know, a boomtown was born. But then, by just 1931, after a sweeping decline in the market for whale oil due to the Great Depression, the island was abandoned. Since then, it has quite literally become a ghost town, with visitors reporting seeing strange orbs of light coming from the abandoned huts, seeing apparitions of people walking around, and even hearing disembodied voices. So while the South Pole remains a harsh land with no official permanent population, it seems that ghosts who are unaffected by what makes the South Pole so difficult to endure have settled in and haunt all those who try to enter their domain. Next up at number 9, Wordie Hut. Although it's named after James Wordie, who was the chief scientist for Sir Edmund Shackleton's endurance expedition in 1914, the Wordie Hut was built much later in 1947. For years it had been rumored to be haunted by terrifying spirits, and after several reports, a group of paranormal researchers from Destination Truth decided to see for themselves and spend a night in the hut. When they arrived, they were immediately taken back by the energy of the cabin. They knew that something was there. That night, members of the team heard frantic flipping of light switches and slamming doors from rooms where no one was staying. Jars began falling off the shelves all on their own, and after their one-night stay, they left completely creeped out. Now, I always think a telling tale of if some place is truly scary is when paranormal investigators, people whose job is literally to investigate creepy stuff, get scared and don't want to come back. Well, even so, visitors have checked it out since, but all reported similar events that chilled them to the bone and have never returned. Coming in at number 6, Shackleton's Hut. Antarctica is mainly a destination visited by scientists and explorers, but considering many of the early explorers died while on these trips, it also makes a lot of sense as to why they are all haunted. And one man who claimed to be a non-believer of ghosts would return from his trip thinking much differently. His name was Sir Edmund Hillary, and he was a New Zealand mountaineer and explorer who in 1953, along with his Sherpa, was the first known person to reach the summit of Mount Everest. So after conquering the mountain, he was looking for another adventure and sought out the South Pole 5 years later. When he arrived, he stayed in Sir Ernest Shackleton's abandoned hut from his famous endurance expedition. And when he was there, he claims to have seen Shackleton's ghost walk towards him and welcome him to the hut before vanishing right in front of his eyes. Ever since, it's been known as a paranormal hotspot, and many who visit leave terrified by what they see. Next up at number 4, Ross Island. Home to one of the most recognized research stations across the continent, it's also the site of a devastating plane crash that left the island drowning in lost spirits. Back in 1977, New Zealand began operating sightseeing trips via plane over Antarctica. But in 1979, a true disaster would strike. Though exactly what happened is unknown, somehow the computer directing the flight got rerouted, and instead of taking its usual trip, it ended up flying dangerously close to a nearby mountain. All of a sudden, in the blink of an eye, the plane crashed, instantly killing all 257 passengers and crew members on board. Today, those that visit the island claim to hear unsettling voices in the darkness, as well as strange ghostly footsteps. Some say they have even seen what they believe to be the flight victims wandering around the frigid landscape, eerily moaning and crying at night. So while there may be some beautiful places to visit, you might want to steer clear of this haunted island altogether. Coming in at number 3, a Soviet military base. Back Back in 2009, scientists passing through the icy scape came across a strange and concerning discovery. While exploring what's called the Pole of Inaccessibility, which is the point furthest from the sea in Antarctica, the group found a random monument with a bust of Vladimir Lenin perched on top. Now, if you don't know who that is or why that's a little bit creepy, let me explain. Vladimir Lenin was the founder of the Soviet Union and first head of government under the new regime. It was under his ruling that Russia became a one-party communist state. So upon discovering his lone bust in the middle of nowhere, the scientists decided it might be a good idea to keep exploring. After some digging, they happened upon an old Soviet military base that was covered by mountains of snow, and they realized that the bust was facing the direction of Moscow. Now, no one knows how long the bust has been there, and even creepier, no one knows why it's there. But many suspect that it might be the place where Lenin was buried back in 1924, and it's thought that his ghost may still haunt the area to this day.